Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are we going to public speak?
Britta, can you come up and use one of the mics too?
Sure.
Just 'cause the acoustics in here.
Oh, where do you want me? I'm Roberta Doherty. I'm the social services medical agent for the town of Andover. I received a phone call and an email last week from Food Share. They're the partner that we deal with for the food that goes to the food pantry. Her concern was that the van that is used to haul most of the foods to the pantry all week long is personally owned by a volunteer person, and it's not in good shape. And if something is to happen with that van, we would lose the ability to get the foods that provide the townspeople that attend the pantry. So I just wanted to bring it to the Board of Selectmen's attention. I provided you all the email. Thank you.
Thank you, Andover Selectmen, for letting me speak tonight. My name is Jennifer Burdett. I've lived in Andover for the last 28 years. As you may have seen in the news or read in the newspaper the last few weeks, my daughter was sexually harassed when she was 15 years old by Coventry Police Officer Michael Hicks, as well as other persons have come forward at this point with other allegations state police are investigating. I know in recent years, Andover faced their own decisions on how to handle sexual harassment at the town hall. I do see you're looking at your personnel policies tonight. I know Andover is still knee-deep in litigation in regards to some of these incidents, and truly it's a great shame this happened in our absolutely amazing town. This person was someone who many people loved, myself included. When the truth came out about his behavior at town hall, I know many of us were absolutely shocked and horrified. I didn't want to believe it, but it was true. I commend the women working in our town who came forward and stood tall, and I commend the people who did not sweep it under the rug. It was the right thing to do to remove him from town hall office. I commend the new leadership formed that are working hard to change old habits and step into the new day. Andover learned the hard way. It was time to shed old ways and old tolerances. Andover learned the women of today will not tolerate such blatant disrespect. I find it ironic that in 2017, as both Coventry and Andover were dealing with sexual harassment issues amongst town employees, both towns chose to handle it very differently. Andover chose to ask their animal control officer, selectmen, and member of many other groups in town to resign. Coventry made a choice to allow Officer Michael Hicks to receive a Police Officer of the Year award in 2017 and proudly post his photo all over their Facebook page receiving it. For that reason, I'm proud to live in Andover. Thank you to the brave women in Andover who stepped forward and refused to tolerate such behavior. You blazed a strong path for others. And thank you for the administration who sent a strong message, finally, this will not be tolerated. As well, I would like to show my absolute appreciation for the exceptional work of Trooper Daniel Collin, who is the initial state trooper to take my daughter's report at Troop K. Sergeant Craig Fox, who communicated with me throughout the process of the case being sent to major crimes. Both Trooper Collin and Sergeant Fox were informative, thorough, and very respectful to both myself and my daughter. They went above and beyond to provide a safe atmosphere for my daughter to come forward. Detective Stephen McManaway, Major Crimes, then reached out and began working on the case, as well as Sergeant Matthew Aslan, with Lieutenant J. Del Grosso as well, all from Major Crimes. My daughter and I were treated with absolute respect and dignity at every stage of the investigation by every member of Major Crimes in Troop K. These members of Major Crimes have gone above and beyond to inform us of law, policy, and procedure. I would also like to thank State's Attorney Matthew Dansky for his hard work. no criminal investigation. None. And I did not need to go to True K, but as you see, I did not listen. I live in Andover, crime happened in Andover, we went to True K. Thank you, Andover. I'm very proud to be a resident. And I'm eternally grateful we have such fine state troopers available to us in Andover, and that Andover itself is moving ahead in how it handles sexual harassment in the workplace. Let's keep up the progressive work. Thank you. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for coming and speaking about it. I know it's not easy for anyone, so we appreciate you coming forward.
I appreciate you being here.
Wally?
Wally Mark, Lakeway. I'm glad to see the Board of Selectmen is taking on a lot of the things that have been done in town for the last 15 years. Things with all these shared services committees and whatnot. My only question is, how many can you create and actually get to accomplish anything? I know all of you are serving on multiple boards and commissions at this time, and I'm just afraid that the hard work that needs to be done to accomplish these goals isn't going to be accomplished because you're too thinly spread. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I actually appreciate you coming and talking about it. We're actually going to talk about that tonight. It was going to get put on the agenda. We're aware that for us even, it's a little much, so we're going to try to look at that a little bit. And we may have to put some things off, unfortunately, because of that. But we're going to, and right now our focus is budget. Obviously, getting things prepared for next year. And then after that, we're going to jump back in and try to start looking at some other stuff. But we may actually dial back because of that. So thank you for bringing that up. Appreciate it.
Hi, Diane Grenier here. I know that the board is very busy with the budget and other very important things, but I just want to bring to your attention that Andover was incorporated in 1848. In the year 2023, we're going to be 175 years old. You know, yippee, long time, but we survived it. And I think that a celebration is going to be in order. And I know 3 years sounds like a long time from now, but it's really not. When you talk about budget season, you're talking this year, next year. And I think that the town should celebrate. I don't know in what form that should be. You know, whether we're going to have a parade or just something at the gazebo, a family fun day, a variety of things. But just to have a concert over here costs $600. You know, so I think something needs to be put in the budget this year and next year. Possibly a committee of some sort needs to be formed, somebody to spearhead the celebration. I really don't want to see us with a pizza off the back of a pickup truck, you know, and calling that our 175th anniversary celebration. So I'd like to just bring it to your attention, and hopefully we can get some people to spearhead it, 2-3 people.
What's wrong with pizza?
I think Andover can do better than that.
We do have a pizza shop, I'm just saying.
And it's wonderful.
People can't eat pizza.
Everybody doesn't eat pizza, right? We got gluten-free people and such. But I think, you know, it requires a little bit of planning, a little bit of forethought, a little bit of money. And like I say, if we start now, we should have something that the whole town can be proud of in 2023.
Do you have any idea what you think is required, either from a fund standpoint or, you know, a planning standpoint? I think more so funds, because you're saying you'd like to see some funds put aside for this. Do you have any idea what you think might be required for this?
No, I really don't have any, you know, I think you need to get maybe a committee of 3 people together, and I'd be happy to help you find those 3 people. It won't be me. I got full plate, thank you. But to spirit and figure out exactly, do we want to make it a concert at the gazebo, you know, or do we want to make it a whole week full of events, or just a weekend, or celebrating for the whole year, different things throughout the year? I mean, there's a variety of things that we can do. It's just a matter of how big, but again, bigger than pizza on the back of a pickup truck.
Okay.
So,
Appreciate it. Anyone else? Okay. Additions, deletions to agenda.
I would like to make a motion for 7, A,
Yeah.
This would be, right?
Yeah.
An all-day series,
Yeah.
and
Do you want?
we got the documentation in today.
Okay. Well, you have a triple I on there, so you want
Quadruple I.
triple I.
And it's going to that day.
Okay.
So number 4.
And then one more item, the item 5.
Okay.
Trees out along the road.
Anyone else?
Yeah, 2 things. I'd like to add item 4.3, census presentation under board and commission presentations. Not really applicable, but seems like a good spot.
So 4A.
Sure. Yeah,
So
4A.
that we can get away from. Because all I have is a straight 4. So
Correct, 4A.
thank you.
And I would also like to motion to delete item 7D and then add item 16E, executive session dash contract discussion.
Yeah, so we're just moving 7D to the end so that we're not
Correct.
interrupting the meeting.
But we're also stating the reason for the executive session, which is an FOI requirement. We can't just state executive session. So we accomplished it. That's it for me.
Any objection? I want to add old business 6. D. Or we can discuss it under that actually. I take it back. All right. And we're good. All right, do we want to do the census presentation?
So you should all have the Cliff Notes version, census presentation before you, so you can read along as. Take it away.
Thank you for having me, and I know that you have a full agenda, so I will be as quick as I can. Better? My name is Catherine Marks, and I work with the U.S. Census Bureau, the New York Division, and I've come in to talk to your town about getting involved with the census. Believe it or not, the census is just 31 days away. So I'm here to talk to you about why the census is safe, easy, and important. Number one, why it's important. In the United States, we've been doing the census since 1790. It's in the enumeration clause of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, for the purpose of apportioning House of Representatives. But it's also very important because the census data defines federal funds that flow from the federal government to the state government to the tune of $675 billion every year. And it also defines a lot of planning that happens. The census is safe in that Title 13 protects the census data, and no respondents, the respondents to the census cannot be used against anyone in any way, in any manner, by any agency, state, federal, or local. That means the FBI cannot get to the data, the CIA, ICE, or DHS. So the census data is very important. But what's really going to happen in Andover, why I'm here in Andover, is because there are changes. The census is very, very easy this year. For the first time ever, all people who receive invitations to respond to the census will be able to respond to the census online. So you'll be able to respond to the census online and by phone. You'll be able to do the traditional paper copy, and then if you do none of those three, we'll be knocking on your door to answer the census. The other thing that's very exciting is that the census, when you do it online and on the phone, you'll be able to do it in English and 12 non-English languages. So that's very exciting. So we're going to work with the senior center population to make sure that they are able to, when they get the invitation to respond, know that it is, in fact, the federal government asking them for this information and that it's not fraud. Anyone listening should be aware that the census is actually very quick and should take about 10 minutes to fill out. in that we do not ask for social security number in the decennial census. We do not ask for bank account numbers, and we do not ask for political affiliation or party. There's been a lot of bad actors out there, or people, having census information, and that is not us. So the census is right around the corner. It's safe, easy, and important. I'm thrilled to be working with the town of Andover to ensure that we get an accurate count of every town in Connecticut, and Andover especially. So that is a very condensed version of my talk. Also in the slides, I showed you some demographics of Andover that you might be interested in looking at. It shows a row slide, it shows socioeconomic and housing demographics of your town. If you want to go into any further information, we can do it at a point where your agenda isn't quite so full with budget and other items.
Can we get this electronically? It's just some of the slides are hard. Did you send it?
I did send it
I
out.
have it electronically, I'm more than happy to send you a copy if you want to go electronically.
Yeah, it's just.
It's too bad we don't get a packet. We've got it.
And almost all the information is in the packets that I gave you here. It shows that the actual people in Andover will be receiving the invitation to respond between March 12th and March 20th.
And what's the percentage of people that would be asked in any given area?
Every single person.
So everyone will be.
Our goal for the 2020 census is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. So every person in Andover, every household, because it's actually done by the household. So a household gets the invitation to respond, and the household goes and responds to the census. So every household in Andover should get an invitation to respond.
Is it possible to get a copy, or is it allowed for us, once we get a copy, to post?
I can give Eric, and I'm not sure if I'm ready. I have a sample of what the invitation to respond would look like, so I can certainly provide it to you, because that does help.
Yeah, just because, if someone comes to their house, they can verify that they're asking the right questions, so maybe we can post that on our website, Facebook page.
Right. So we're hoping with this outreach and with a lot of the involvement, there's been some social media posts already for the town, that would get a accurate count for people self-responding.
Sure.
So people indeed go and self-respond, and then they wouldn't have to get the knock on the door, because a lot of people say, I don't want the knock on the door. How do I avoid having that happen? And my answer is, fill out the census and you won't get the knock on the door.
Sure, and I guess the second question is when or if, maybe we'll get 100%, but let's assume that that's not gonna happen for the sake of expediency. When that happens, do you have the same people coming out to the area? Like, is it possible that we can, if this person comes up your driveway, don't shoot them or something?
Well, first of all, we hope that all our employees are safe. We have job fairs in Andover and all the other towns in the state of Connecticut, so that we get people in Andover to work in Andover.
Sure.
So,
Only in that we certainly have had some issues recently in the area, not really just isolated to our town. People were getting super vigilant about people walking up driveways specifically, because there's been some burglaries and stuff. So people are pretty, I guess aware. So it'd be easier, we know who's out there.
well, I think what we can do is when we're start canvassing,
Yep.
we'll talk to make sure that there's something out there. But again, the best way to avoid the census taker being at your home is to fill out the census online
Sure.
or by the phone. And by the phone, you can just pick up and call the phone number and fill it out.
Mhm.
But we certainly can make sure that you have the information as to when canvassers are going to be here.
Yeah, I think sometimes people miss the fact that the reason people live in the sticks is because they don't like people walking up their driveway. So we try to do as much as we can to let people know when things are happening. But in any small town, it's a snail's pace to get the word out. So even you can advertise in the paper every week, and we've done it, and people still go, really? That's going on? So, so we're just trying to maybe be a little proactive. So yes, definitely please reach out to Eric and we'll put as much out there as we can.
And one of the great things, and again, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but we are using technology to our advantage. And so as I said, the first invitation to respond will come between March 12th and March 20th. On March 21st, Andover only has one census tract. So on March 21st, I will actually be able to know what your response rate is. So we could make a challenge. we could make a challenge, like Andover was gonna be the first town in the state of Connecticut to get to 100%, right? We could have some fun. No pizza, but,
That was your one shot, pizza.
but you know, that's why we're working hard. So we'll be able to track and see what's happening in Andover.
Yeah, we'll just have you coordinate with Derek, just to get, it's easier, like people will call the town clerk's office and say, is there someone out in town, and she'll
Yeah.
pass it on, but it's really a kind of small town thing, so.
Understood. Understood.
Anyone else? Scott? Okay, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Town admin? You're up there.
Okay, so I'm not gonna go through my whole administrator's report. I'm just gonna touch on the real highlights. It is posted on the town's website. You all have an electronic copy before you. Big things, you've got the budget, and I sent you a budget synopsis which outlines the major changes in the budget. We're losing our inland wetlands agent, Josh Snarsky has resigned. So as soon as we decide how many hours we're going to be allocating to that position, we will start re-advertising for that position. We have a temporary fill-in for him in our zoning enforcement officer will assume his responsibilities temporarily. Personnel policies are still under review. We did have a swatting incident in town, swatting being somebody calling 911 and saying their house was on fire and giving a very descriptive thing which instituted a pretty wide response from multiple towns. That happened a couple times. It turned out it was some students in the elementary school. So there's some, the school is working with a whole range of people to address that issue. There aren't that many legal avenues because of the age of the individuals involved. And obviously, we're not going to talk about who they are because of that. But that did happen. Hopefully, we've addressed that situation.
You said elementary school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. So, Amanda is working on the annual report, which will come out at the same time as the audit. Remember, we asked most boards and commissions to submit reports to the Board of Selectmen, so we have the basis information for a lot of the boards and commissions already. I also had a long meeting with Hebron's town manager, Andy Kearney, and then later another one with Josh Bolton's town manager. Just talking about shared services, so we're still pushing that on both ends. We are going to be able to work with Hebron on subbing out all of the athletic field work with Hebron Parks and Rec. However, we're not going to be able to share the tree crews just because they only have one tree crew, and he basically said they're going to be fully occupied just dealing with carpentry stuff. He doesn't think he has the excess capacity to essentially sub them out to Andover. And we also had talked about maybe going in, part ways on a new sweeper. As you know, our sweeper's 40-something years old and is in need of replacement. They have pushed their sweeper request off 2 years. Basically, their Board of Finance isn't funding their purchase of the sweeper. So, but that actually fits in with our capital plan, so in a couple of years we can reconsider that.
Yeah, that may work out well, because the loader will time out about the same time.
Yep. Had a bunch of meetings with road working contractors, both Indus, who's a company that did our crack sealing, and we've also been talking to Comer Contracting, who's one of the state bid contractors for chip seal and rubber chip seal. Still waiting on the street scan. I reached out to them this week, but I've not gotten a response yet back when we're going to have the
Have you gotten any response back?
I got a response back a couple weeks ago that they were working on it. So no, I don't have a firm date for that. Bridges and culverts, I also met about 3 weeks ago with Brendan Hanfield from Yantic River Consultants. who we've hired to do the preliminary evaluations on all our bridges and culverts. We're still trying to find one that's actually big enough that we can apply for a LoadSip grant, because those are good grants if we can get them. And
Those are still on hold.
LoSiP is on hold. LoadSip, which is the transportation version, we've been told is not on hold, and Capital Regional Council of Government is accepting applications. The deadline for that is mid to end of April. But the problem is most of the items eligible for LoadSip funding we're not eligible for, because most of their projects deal with road work, and to qualify for the road work, you have to be a major collector. And the only major collector roads classified in Andover are state roads. And I'm not spending my time and effort to put in a grant for the state to fix state roads. The state can fix state roads without being grant funding for it.
Okay.
So, but we're still working on it. So you guys probably all know the grant list is out. We did have a 1.1% increase in the grant list, which is pretty good because a lot of the neighboring towns have been dealing with enough crumbling foundations that the grant list is going negative. So the fact that we're positive is a good thing. And we apparently had a little snafu with our burning official, and for a period of time, like the last 3 years, we haven't actually had a legal burning official. We have resolved that now. We do have a burning official in the town of Andover, which is relevant because the Wetlands Commission has an application before them. Maybe Scott, you can tell us what happened with that, to burn a house down in Andover as training for the fire department. But we couldn't prove it. You know, the town couldn't move forward on it because we technically didn't have a burning official.
It wasn't Ed delegated?
Ed was delegated.
Previously?
Yes, and this actually wasn't Ed's fault, because we found all the original paperwork we submitted to the state in 2017.
So it's something that's we were supposed to keep up with that didn't get.
Yeah, but we actually did our part. The state either lost the paperwork or did something with it, but we had all the certified paperwork for 2017,
Okay.
which should have still been active, but anyway, not too big a deal.
But it's fixed.
It's fixed now, and I also met with Lenco Electric about the structured wiring in the building as part of the project to redo the IT. So I'm hoping to have a quote back for him at the end of this week or the beginning of next week, and we can start proceeding. I've started purchasing capital equipment for that project.
Okay.
And that's pretty much all I got, unless you have questions for me.
So they're gonna start moving forward on that.
So as soon as, we purchased the minimum amount of rack stuff that they need to wire to.
Yep.
So as soon as I get the quote back from Lenco, as long as it's reasonable, we will go with that so we can get that project going, because the wiring has to go in before any of the, most of the rest of the stuff gets installed.
Are we still expecting a server in April or May?
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yep.
Did you also open a bid this afternoon?
We did. We opened a bid for the reval services, and I think we have a sheet in front of you, which is the bid list. We ended up getting 2 bids from Tyler Technology and Vision Appraisal. We still haven't done an in-depth review of the bids, but Vision was definitely the lower cost bid. And Tyler, interestingly enough, they rejected a bunch of our RFP conditions and said they're going to use their basic contract as the basis for any agreement, as opposed to what we put in the RFP, which seems a little arrogant to me, but we'll review both projects in depth. And I suspect John Chaponis will want to make a decision probably at the next Board of Selectmen meeting, and we'll have the info for you.
All right, great. Questions? All you good?
Yes, thank you.
Got it. All set. All right, old business.
I had given until the, third week in January for any employee comments to come back. Anything that came back will be incorporated in the next round. And the next thing that really has to happen is it's got to go out to the town's attorney for review prior to anything else happening. You all have a copy that's pretty close to the draft we're working with now that I gave you several months ago. So it's ongoing.
Okay, did you get some feedback?
I got some feedback, not a lot actually.
No, okay. So that means you did a good job the first time. What's your time frame on that?
So I would like to have it, I mean, right now I'm focused on the budget, but I would like to have that, I would like to get that to the attorney certainly by March 1 for his review.
Great. Connectivity grant?
Connectivity grant, the Inland Wetlands Commission approved the town's application, wetlands application regarding the connectivity grant, and we got a response back from DOT that we do not need basically a in-depth study of the effect of the project on the flood zone, because the only thing we're proposing doing in the flood zone is putting sharrows on the road, and DOT finally figured out that that probably doesn't affect the flood capacity of the town.
Okay.
So that's ongoing.
All right. Shared Services Committee, educational.
Do you want to give the updates on that?
You're doing such a good job. So right now we are trying to work through the grant charter to see what our limitations are on that. Also, I reached out to some of the original members of the board of ed from when we pulled out of the compact, the shared front office compact last time. And Carol, you did some research for us and came up with some background information. So I'll have that available at the next meeting. We're trying to put that together. We also have some folks reaching out to, there was an educational meeting in Hartford that Shannon Lowder went to. And she actually brought it up there. Ironically enough, people came up to us after and said, we're thinking about doing the same thing. Maybe we should all talk about it. So they're trying to do a forum so people can kind of share information and ideas. But literally everybody's dealing with exactly the same issue, no matter the size of the town. Even bigger towns are struggling with this. So in some cases, they're actually seeing the population jump quicker than ours is. So they're trying to address it as well. I think some of that stuff's going to take a little more time than they were planning, but we'll see. I will say that there was a request from the board of ed to kind of maybe define what our offer was exactly for the shared office, but that's something we'll have to sit down and figure out. My response to them when they brought it up to me was simply that I feel like knowing that we're changing software, knowing that we're changing some other staffing, or shifting this some staffing and hours and stuff, it make sense to have the person, we define the position, but let that person define what it becomes eventually. Because I don't think we're going to know what the staffing really is in that office until after we have new software, honestly. But, okay, so shared services committee to include road maintenance and trail services at the town committee, right?
Correct.
So speaking of that, while we brought it up tonight, I mean, to be quite candid, I lost that coin cost and ended up on that committee. But I feel like, at least for myself, with my involvement in the budget and the school, I'm a little stretched. And I feel like you're already kind of doing the legwork on most of that stuff. As you said, you're meeting with other towns and you're doing a ton of that stuff behind the scenes. I don't know how adding a committee in this particular case, when a lot of it is so very specific, some of the things we talk about are probably going to have to go to CIP rather than shared services committee because it may be shared equipment type things. I don't know that it's a great idea to get marked down in that at this point. As much as I think the intent was good, I just think we're spread a little thin to be trying to do that on top, or at least I am, to do that on top of anything else. And I know Paul is stressed in, Jeff's traveling with work. I mean, just don't know that it's a good fit right now. You and I talked about this, but where do you really kind of feel on this at this point?
So I would agree that a lot of this I've been actively working on anyway. The Board of Selectmen made a decision to empower that committee. My only concern really is the fact that we just went out and recruited volunteers for the committee.
Yep.
And now we turn around and tell them, we're not. I think we're all wrapped up in budget right now, and maybe the smart thing to do would be to just delay the implementation of that committee for a period of time. But it's certainly up to the board. The board created the committee. The board could unseat the committee also. I don't have strong feelings on it either way, to be perfectly honest.
And don't we have, isn't one member of the committee at large, she's on another committee also?
Yes. Yeah, so I mean, it's to that point where we have so many committees going right now, we have people that are serving on 2 committees.
I don't disagree that we globally
In our exuberance.
impaneled an awful lot of committees in a very short period of time and struggled to find enough volunteers to serve on them. That is correct.
Maybe we could have a committee to review the number of committees. I personally would make a motion at this point to take that committee back, to rescind the shared services committee at this point and allow you to move forward with the conversations you're already having with town managers, and that bringing any equipment or those types of things to the appropriate committee, whether it be CIP or what have you, and anything else that you bring back to the board. That'd be my motion. Is there a second?
One second, yes.
Discussion?
Jeff, didn't you make the original motion? No?
I think you're taking care of everything as far as the shared services right now.
Okay.
Okay.
The only thing I would add is maybe you put your findings together and you present them to the committee at the end.
You'd have to impanel and then have everybody there. I just feel like the irony is that basically 3 of the people on the committee are either selectmen or Eric, so you basically have 2 at large.
Okay.
So.
Like I said, I'm with Eric. I feel you're right.
Well, let's take a vote then. All in favor? Opposed? All right.
Okay, we will notify the at-large committee members that we have decided, at least at this point, that that committee will not go forward.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm not in favor down the road, but I don't want to be in a situation where we leave something on an agenda and we just keep kicking it down the road. We're going to go back to it later.
Understood.
Senior Center Building Committee? Scott, Jeff, and all those?
We picked the meeting dates,
Okay.
the first meeting date, and all the participants that were notified are selected, and they're going through the swearing-ins, and I think our first meeting is April 1st.
April 1?
Yeah, April 1.
Correct.
Great. Cameras, athletic field?
So we purchased the cameras, registered them, we have a yearly service contract, the resident state trooper has them. I don't know whether they're installed yet, you could ask him, he's got the password, Scott has the password.
Are you saying that we authorized something at the last meeting and
Yes.
it's done with it already?
Yes.
Awesome. I will see it up right now.
Yeah, I don't know whether he's actually physically put them up, but they're purchased, batteries installed, tested, and in his hands.
Great. Email address. Awesome. You guys are great. Appreciate it. All right. Do you want to do photo review now or maybe move that?
I mean, I was kind of presuming the majority effort of this meeting was budget review. I mean, that's certainly what we need the most time on,
Okay.
but you are the board.
We can do budget review now if people want to. I just kind of feel like that is going to be very involved. So.
Would you like to get some of the other things out of the way?
Yeah.
Get the new business out of the way?
Are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that. I think we have some, we have some people here to present, so
Okay. Yeah,
we can get them higher.
we're gonna achieve budget review, so we get some of this other stuff out of the way. We'll put it over, we'll put it like after 14. All right, new business, events, permits, applications. How about the Mass Con relay, anything on that?
Nothing at the moment. I haven't been diligent with contacting Matt. I know he has outstanding certificate of insurance,
Okay.
which won't be available until probably midsummer.
Okay.
And then he's always his partner plan, but I don't see any issue with approving this permit.
All right, was there something about making sure we had organization as far as,
Perfect.
but with CERT too, right? We're gonna talk to CERT.
Yeah, well, they were gonna contact Sir.
Okay. All right, so hasn't done that yet?
Not that I'm aware of. They did in the past, they were notified.
Okay. Well, let's just make sure that we have approval from CERT before, if that's all.
I mean, I have spoken to Karen Zito about the event, who's our
Yeah.
coordinator basically, and she doesn't have any real problem in concept with it. Her concern was that last year, they didn't have really accurate time windows, and she just wants a better feeling for when the people actually need, when we need road closures and road monitors.
So let's get whatever she wants in writing and get it to him.
Okay?
And then when he replies, let's get an okay in writing from her. So that everybody's on the same page. Any objection to that?
No. I know they have approval to use Benjamin Franklin.
Perfect.
So if that gets us out of the way of the connectivity grant.
Okay, great. Hodges Grill, Spot K,
Yep.
is that you also?
It probably is. So this came in from Ken Platt, which was the promoter that did the summer series in town, and he's got the permit. I don't know if you want to handle these things separately. He wants to move this event from Vernon to Andover.
Okay.
He has approval for Benjamin Franklin
Mm-hmm.
for the race. He's actually filled out an application
Okay.
for our review. Does anybody have any questions on that application?
I will do it briefly, anyone else? Paul? No? Okay.
I mean, part of the proceeds are going to the town, part of the proceeds are going to the Valley Falls Trail Fund.
Okay. It sounds like a great idea.
It's a fundraiser, so.
And I have to say, Ben Franklin keeps stepping up, we may have to look at acknowledging him at some point.
And I would also say that he's run the race series on the rail trail for a period of time, and it's been very
You
successful.
know, he's very organized, so I don't see any issues with
There
that.
haven't been any issues from the
I
town.
don't see any issues with the organization.
So we have insurance in place and all that.
Yeah, that one will be insured by them.
All right, and we'll get, do we get verification in that?
No, but we usually before the event, we usually get a certificate because he has to apply for it.
Okay. All right, so I guess I would make a motion that we support that and approve it, just with the additional insurance. Approving that.
The only question I had, the fire chief asked for, so he had put something in there that he wanted medical support, and the fire chief just asked for clarification of what he's actually asking for. So if you can, contact him and see what his real requirements are for that.
I plan with Ron Michaels to get together with all these events and just give them dates of everything that's going on once they get approved.
Yeah.
And then he's got a list of the events and he's notified in case we need medical coverage.
Yeah, they probably want an EMT.
Well, it's like the mountain bike race out back and the rail trail series. Ron Michaels was aware of it and he had people staffed over here. So, in case.
Does that answer your question?
It does,
Okay.
He just wants to be kept in the loop, that's all.
All right, so I still have a motion on the table, I need a second. Scott seconds. Any further discussion? Eric, any other input?
Yeah, I think it's, sorry. This mic's a little questionable with that speaker. I think it's a fine idea. I mean, so far, he's been very responsible in the event. The majority of the event takes place on the rail trail. We're using a public or a private property for staging, so it's very minimal impacts to the town. And it's a cool thing.
Great.
Actually, he needs to apply, the insurance is basically for Ben Franklin.
Yeah,
I mean, they're really using no town property.
this all apply, well, how does the rail trail work?
It's a state property. He has to notify the deed,
Okay.
make sure that,
All right.
they just need to know what's going on.
All right, so take a vote, all in favor? Great. So the last one is your summer, or actually, no, we got a couple more. So your summer series?
Yep, that's gonna be basically unchanged from last year, and, he's gonna require us, for insurance through Kerma, which was the same as last year.
Okay, and that was accomplished with no issues last year?
No issues whatsoever.
And it doesn't impact us with Kerwin, otherwise?
It doesn't impact us either, and, taking Eric's advice, we contacted Ben Franklin about that, and it's going, that race is gonna be, Sarah Petition's gonna be at Ben Franklin as well,
Okay,
in case there is construction.
all right, so do we need to approve that as well?
Sure, go ahead and make a motion.
I will make a motion that we approve the 5K summer series.
I'll second that.
All seconds, further discussion? All in favor? Okay, mountain biking.
Okay, we've had a series in the back, for the last few years. It's been very successful. We haven't had any issues or accidents or complaints. Eric, have you heard anything negative?
Nope.
Okay,
Okay. There is a few people from the club here today, if you have any questions. This is actually going to be, this permit is for actually a larger event. It's not for the series, correct?
correct.
So, if they have questions about the insurance, or do you have questions on the insurance? And how this event's gonna be run? This is not gonna be run through the town.
Okay, so this is also private,
This is gonna be privately run,
well, on town property,
not town property,
with private insurance?
with private insurance.
Yes. Okay.
So, now, if you, but just tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, can you just tell us who you are for the?
Okay. Do I have a microphone?
No, you do.
Yep, you can have it right here.
All right. So first off, just thank you to the board for giving me a moment just to talk a little bit about the event that we're trying to put on.
So that's my second call.
And also to say thank you for the past 2 years and allowing us to use that property to be able to run a short track series. We've done a lot of improvements back there with help of our master trail builder who's here, John Harbox. And we've been able to run a successful event like Jeff had mentioned. Just to let you all know, my name is Stan Lazan. I'm the president of Exposition Wheelman, which is a cycling team that's located pretty centrally around here. We are out of a bike shop in Manchester, but we have individuals that live in town and throughout the entire area. The event that we want to be able to put on for this spring, or actually it's, I think we said May 23rd is the date, is going to be what's called the Short Track Mountain Bike Series, where throughout the day there will be a number of events with racers who are able to come up, bring their mountain bikes, and then participate on this event, which is on a 2-mile course that we have in the back here. And there'll be different types of events with racers going off at pretty regular schedules. The racers will be going off in groups, and they'll complete a couple of laps around the trails. And then after that, there'll be timed, and then there will be another event and another throughout the entire event.
Okay.
So we're not expecting that there's going to be much impact to the town, other than to be able to use this area here around the school to be able to, just for parking really, and for a lot of people to warm up. There's really not anything I would see for a road closure. We're not going to be going across roads or anything like that. Like we were just talking about, we do have insurance through USA Cycling, which is the governing body for cycling and bike racing in the United States.
Okay. And what do you do for medical?
So we would want to make sure that we have the right, obviously with insurance, we're gonna make sure that that's covered, but then whatever we need to be able to bring on site. In the past, we had a short track race, we actually worked with the volunteer fire department to have somebody on hand in case there was an accident. So we would like to partner with either the volunteer fire department, or we could see what other accommodations or anything else we'd be able to do.
Okay.
So you're requesting bathrooms?
Yes, bathrooms would be a big help, obviously, if there's a way for us to be able to use bathrooms either in this building or at school, for that day, that would be excellent.
Eric, ideas for that?
Yeah, my only concern honestly is that if we have that number of participants and we're using the bathrooms here, we're probably, our normal cleaning cycle is Friday.
Yeah.
We would probably want to plan on a cleaning cycle on Sunday to address any, so the building's in decent shape Monday morning. But I don't see that being a huge deal.
How many folks are you talking about?
So we've got estimated probably about 150. Like I said, that's not all at one time though. This is happening throughout the day, people will be coming and going.
Do you think we should look at like a porta potty or something, or? Because if you get a wet day, they're gonna be tracking through that. That's gonna be a mess.
Will there be, will there be any proceeds donated to the town from this event?
That is something that we definitely did when we did the short track series, and all proceeds went to the town to be able to help the community build trails and maintain trails. We're still working on the details of where the proceeds are going to go, just because we have to make sure that anything that we're charging, we have expenses that we have to make sure that we're going to cover. And then there's also prizes and other things, so we want to make sure that we're able to cover all of that.
No, but your group has been doing some show work for us. We're not paying you for that, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you brought in like material or labor, or what are you providing to do that?
We've provided labor, so John, like I said, our master trail builder before, because he went out and actually sketched out the best trails that would not have any impacts to the environment, and also be a great recreational trail to be able to use for cycling, for running, for hiking, whatever we want to do. But other than that, we've not come in with any kind of materials or major equipment or anything like that.
So you haven't had to put in any water bars or any of that stuff?
No, and John can speak to that if there's anything that you want to cover.
My name's John Carlos. We haven't done anything like that. We tried to build any trails we built that work with the natural landscape.
Okay.
That is something we had talked about potentially doing with some of the proceeds, but that would be up to whoever controls your trail funds. If we make money and you want us to build a bridge through a wet area or something like that.
Okay.
It looks like the trails get really well used out there. I was really encouraged last year when we went to clean up for the summer series. There's almost no cleanup needed. People have been using the trails really regularly. So it does seem like people are enjoying the trails.
Which is good for us in the town.
Yeah, and we tried to build the trails so that we didn't need to have any of those features. There are definitely a few places that could use some improvements.
Yeah, well, generally once the trail starts getting worn in, that's when the water bar is going to become, because now you got to funnel.
So we, I took International Mountain Bike Association trail building because I'm also an answer there, so I have this kind of notion of slopes and grades.
Sure.
But we really tried to build the trails so they're durable, and they're built, they're not excessively steep, they're intended to allow the water to run off. So they're meant to be built to be durable without, with very little maintenance.
Okay. Any other questions?
I would think that we could provide 2 porta potties for that.
Okay.
I would think that would be more prudent than trying to use the restrooms here.
I would tend to agree.
And we get really good pricing through Carol, so.
Yeah.
I think we've had enough in-kind services as far as trail building that we could provide.
Yeah, so it's kind of, you're probably on $100. Yeah, it makes sense.
We could actually we have trails fund money that we could use for that.
Yeah.
All right. To support this.
Do you think 2 porta potties would be sufficient?
I think that would cover it, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the other thing I could see that would make sense would be to allow the use of the community room for registration. Is that something the board would consider? I mean, I don't know whether that's something you even want to consider, but to me, it makes sense, especially if it's raining or something, to be able to set your laptop up here and take registration in here. Is that?
If that was available to us, we would certainly think about taking advantage of it.
Gotcha.
Generally, when you do other events, you're probably setting up portable tents, right?
We would do that, yeah, if it's a nice day, we might not need tents, I believe we have a pretty nice gazebo up there that we might be able to use as well, though we probably want something close to the actual race where we're gonna be starting and timing all of the events. A lot of the registration actually happens up front, so people will register online, and so the registration process isn't too difficult, it's really people just picking up numbers. Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I would say is that May is fairly, there are spots of that trail that are fairly wet in May. So there may need to be some thought into how we deal with that. But it's not something, it's something that the town can deal with.
Well, I think what he's saying is before they go back out, they're gonna go back out there and walk the trails anyways to make sure they're ready, so.
We will, and we'll have to do some weed whacking, and I'm sure there's some branches down and things like that. We also hopefully will be doing the summer series again. I mean, this didn't come up, but, so if there's any damage from this May race, we will want to go back and fix that anyways.
And address it.
It's in good shape. But there really are only a couple places that
You're crossing.
but there are definitely a few places that potentially could be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like you've already interacted with the town before and you're doing your due diligence, so. I don't have any objection to doing this, and it sounds like if there's an issue, you'll reach out to us, and if it's something that you guys aren't able to handle, certainly let us know and we'll try to figure it out, but. So I would make the motion to, accept the application. The town will agree. The town will provide 2 porta potties, in lieu of previous in-kind services. If you guys decide that you can make a donation, we would certainly appreciate that, and we would dedicate it to the trail funds.
And I would offer a condition on that, the applicant showing proof of event insurance for this.
In the town of Andover to be listed, correct?
Yep.
And then, will we have to notify Sally, at the school about the parking?
It's a weekend, so probably not.
We can certainly notify the Board of Ed and Sally that an event is taking place on that Saturday, because that is within the school year. But I think worst case scenario, we use the town parking lot here, then the town parking lot here. If it's 150 people spread out over the day, the majority of people aren't staying the whole day. We can probably accommodate that, but we'll at least reach out to make sure that they're not holding an event at the same time. Because I don't know for sure one way or the other.
We probably want, if we're doing that, we should be talking to the fire department too. All right, so let's make a motion then, I would make a motion then that we accept the application. The town provided 2 porta potties, verification of insurance, notification of school and fire department. Town will be listed as the appropriate redress on the insurance.
Additional insured.
And that any donation coming from the series would be dedicated to continued trail maintenance back there. Second?
Second.
Scott got it. Scott? Any further discussion? All in favor? Gentlemen, we wish you luck. Thank you very much. Keep us posted. Thank you. All right, 5 is you also, Jeff.
Okay, I've kind of gotten an earful from a few residents regarding the trees, the logs that are on the hill, the bank on Long Hill Road. And I just want to bring it up and Derek, is there anything we can do about that?
So we certainly can clear the logs close to the roadway. there's some question about, so there's two issues. One, because the town didn't do the cutting and a private company did the cutting at the behest of the utility company, as long as we don't touch it, we don't really have any liability because they did it. However, we have been kind of made aware that it's a problem. So, and we did reach out to Asplund and ask them to remove it, and they had agreed to it, but then they've subsequently pulled out of town completely, and there's no crews in the area. Mainly because, well, we won't go into reasons, but, so my suggestion is that we just get the public works crew to clear everything within, say, 10 feet of the roadway and just dump it in the pit and be done with it.
Well, I'm concerned,
Because I don't think we're gonna
I'm
get-
concerned that there's something way up on the top of the hill, and they're leaned up against saplings that are about this big around.
Yeah,
And it's gonna be a matter of time, those are gonna rot, or they're gonna come down. And I really don't wanna see one of those 12-foot or 15-foot logs roll out into the road.
Well, let's be clear, is this town property or private property?
as far as I know, most of that should not be town property.
So it's private property.
Correct.
So they got permission from the homeowner to cut it. So why is the town paying it?
Well, they
see,
shouldn't
they
have
don't
left it
need-
like that, they should have cleaned up.
They don't need permission because any private homeowner is part of, they have an access easeway along every existing utility right of way. So they don't technically, the only time the utility company needs permission is if they're tapping down your individual line to your house. They need permission for that.
I would disagree with that because they don't have to tap mine down because it's underground.
Right.
But yet they came and asked to cut because it fell within my frontage.
Well, if it was on your town property, they would, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do we know where this fell within the property line? That's my point.
Honestly, without researching, so one of the questions I've had is part of the line in question comes up diagonally because where Wheeling Road, or where Long Hill and Bear Swamp intersect, is kind of a screwy intersection to begin with, and the utilities don't strictly follow the road. The utilities do a cut through, which I'd be willing to bet is an old town right-of-way. Now, who owns that now, who controls that right-of-way, I really have no idea. I mean, we would need to research that to figure out whose property that is.
My only point is that if we start doing this and it's on private property, we're gonna get more and more asks for that, and then you're opening up a can of worms.
Well, my concern is that they took those trees down and they left a more hazardous situation than leaving the trees standing. I mean, one of those logs comes down, and it comes down the roadway like on a night like tonight, and you can't see it, it's gonna be a mess.
Should be their responsibility.
And we
I mean,
should,
they should not have left it, they should not have left it in that state of.
again, but we shouldn't have town employees on private property.
That's what I'm saying, the town employees shouldn't be doing it, they should come back and clean it up.
And I'm not saying that. The
Yeah.
only thing I'm saying is the stuff within 4 or 5 feet of the actual roadway, that's like the small stuff that's cut and sitting there, they can remove, because that's clearly within the town's right of way.
Generally, the way a lot of these old roads works is a lot of times the right of way, they used to get as much as they could, it was 22 feet from the center of the road, right? But if there's a stone wall or a breaking point there, that's where it stops usually.
Yeah, remember too, Long Hill historically was a state road, not a town road.
Yep.
So it likely has a wider right of way, but not necessarily.
I don't know, it would either be, it'd be on the top, on the site.
Right.
But it's just, some of those logs are probably 20, 30 feet up steep embankment, and they're held by a 3-inch sapling that's holding it back right now. And, and I don't think it's the town's responsibility, and they shouldn't, they left us with a hazardous situation that needs to be rectified.
I think we try to reach out to us, I personally am not okay with the town employees doing it, but.
I'm not either, I think they should come back and clean up their mess.
So let's see if there's a contact point, instead of just calling somebody, let's
We'll
send
send them a letter.
them a letter, let's have a letterhead saying that they've left a hazardous situation, we'd like this addressed, and, go from there.
Maybe some pictures probably wouldn't hurt. I mean, some of those logs are teetering pretty precariously over the bank right now.
Yeah, maybe you could,
Yeah, it's
And I that's not from one person, I've felt this from 3 or 4 people concerned about it.
I don't disagree, I drive by that every day,
It's
it
just-
just irritates me every time it's just a question of, you know.
When you get your ticket from the trooper, just tell them you're trying to get past that trip.
We just need to do something about it before somebody gets hurt.
Yeah,
So,
okay,
we're,
so
we're
noted.
gonna, we can send a letter.
I'm in agreement.
Is that gonna drag it out?
Listen, again, I'm not gonna ask a town employee to climb up a 30-foot bank and take a tree down.
No, we're not climbing way up there and getting the stuff way up. We can potentially get the stuff close to the.
Could I suggest that Eric contact the tree coordinator for Eversource Energy
Yeah,
and get them out there? It's their responsibility. That's from their contractor.
yeah, that's my note, is the first ask is
Eversource has to take care of that. It's
Have you
their
ever seen what that's
responsibility.
like? It's.
They have crews that come right out and load them up on trains.
Is that what you were talking about already, Eric, or is it?
Well,
you were talking as one?
the note I made to myself would be this time, go after Eversource, not Splendid, because,
Because we have a contact point.
yeah,
And I do recall there were signs up there that said, leave alone. Right. My wood.
well, that was farther down, it may be the same property.
I remember seeing it.
Yeah,
I traveled over, but I said, not much to, of course.
Yeah,
But I reach out to Eversource, it's their responsibility to take care of it.
appreciate the input, Kurt, thank you. All right, moving on.
We don't need to make a motion for that, do we?
No, we don't. I don't feel we do. We want to. Okay, budget target for town entities, let's do that when we go through the budget. C is also gonna kind of fall under the executive session, so. Uh, 8, meeting minutes.
you all have a copy of the meeting minutes, and you should have a copy of a motion to approve if you so desire.
Does anyone have any corrections? Anyone? All right, I would motion that we approve the minutes for the Board of Selectmen's January 13th regular scheduled meeting, 2020. Second. Scott seconds.
Oh, sorry, Jeff.
Jeff.
I'm sorry, I saw you two pointing at each other, I thought he was raising his hand. Jeff seconds.
All in favor? Thank you. Moving on.
Okay, we talked about this, sorry.
No, that's fine. Assessors report reevaluation.
Okay, so you have a copy of the bid sheet before you. We received 2 bids, one from Tyler Technologies, one from Vision Appraisal.
But you're gonna right now, get back, you're gonna look over, it, get back to us at the next meeting.
Yeah, I'm just telling you, the bottom line was the 2 bid amounts were $87,500 and $77,500.
Wow. That's scary. He pegged it almost dead on because he said about 80. So. Originally. Okay. Treasurer's report. Barbara,
There's the packet.
would you like to go over the treasurer's?
Okay. Revenue summary, budget summary. We are utilizing the, over expenditure report system. And you know what, I realize I did not include that in here. I don't really change it from last time. But the only thing you've had to address, and there's one item that's moved on to the Board of Finance, so we've kind of gotten the budget under control just in that way. The overages are being approved to overspend, but there is room in the end to move things internally.
Is there any outliers guys not having issues with?
No. Well, some Eric has, yes, but he's got plans for them.
Yeah.
Things such as he's shifting
I think we know about the,
sand, salt, and
Yeah.
other than that, no. There are
So there's nothing else?
Yeah, that Eric hasn't talked about in his report. Revenue, big chunk of that, education cost sharing, we've already gotten 2 payments now, and they're coming in as scheduled. So
Okay.
we'll anticipate the full amount for that.
So the only thing we're holding up on is Town Aid Road?
Town Aid Road.
But we're spending.
Well, it's still positive. There isn't much being spent out of it.
Oh, okay.
So, no, there was a carryover. So it's still in the positive.
But part of it is we're not spending against that until we know this date is actually going to, because that is essentially our nest egg for emergency nest egg for road and crisis stuff.
Guardrail repairs, washouts. Yep.
Yeah, anything like that.
Sure.
We do have some guardrail money also in something called insurance guardrails. So when we get our insurance reimbursement because of the guardrail damage,
Yeah.
we have a separate revenue fund for our not revenue fund, special revenue fund. And Ed knows about that, so sometimes he will come in and check the balance. It's a few thousand, but he will do minor repairs to guardrails with that small amount of money.
Okay.
Other revenues, usually coming in a little faster than we budget conservatively for, such as town clerk.
Okay.
So state funding, we've got 3 other state grants that came in December 31st, again, just where they're supposed to be. So the state money looks really good, and that's the bulk of the revenue.
so except for Town Aid Road,
Where are you at on audit?
Where am I in audit? Oh yeah, I talked to Michael this afternoon. He's already requested his list from the Board of Ed.
Michael being the auditor.
Correct.
Oh, you say, okay.
And so they're working on that. They've got their worksheet set up, they're putting numbers in. I'm still working on the financials, and that was the conversation I had with him today. So I'm still inputting numbers, but it's just less for them to do when they get here.
So sometime in March, but definitely.
I'm
He's
sending,
budgeted.
I'm finally sending him, he's finally requested the rest of the system reports that I'll be sending him tomorrow, and that will enable him to start looking at that. So he's hoping to come out and do the testing. Anything they can get in, they'll get in at their office, and that's what they're doing right now. So they have started the process. They are working on our audit.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Barbara? Okay. Transfers and refunds. Budget refund request,
Yeah, that should be in there. I think there were only 2. It's a pretty light month.
the winner is. Looks like we have 2 requests. Cheryl Carr for $264. And Jerry Hardesty for $208. I apologize, I'm looking at these to figure out exactly what.
I think they're both motor vehicle.
Yeah, I'm trying to make that out though, let's see. It just says refund of excess payment, doesn't say what.
I remember Jerry's was he traded in a Tacoma, I think.
Oh, that rust bucket he had, that's right. And the other one is on a Nissan, I think, okay. So I would motion to approve the 2 refunds, Jerry Hardesty, $208.11, Cheryl Carr, $264 even.
One second.
Paul seconds. Discussion. All in favor? Seeing none. Do you have any refunds?
Did you sign them?
I would, but I am not the first one.
So easy to, okay.
Can you use the vice first selectman?
I'll tell you what, you get a definitive opinion by the candidate, well, otherwise.
Fair enough.
He didn't have to sit through the meeting, he got some work out of this. I don't see any refunds, or, I'm sorry, I don't see any transfers.
No.
Okay, tax collector report, refund request, department reports, fire department, resident trooper, we had in our packets, any questions?
No, I have a meeting scheduled to talk to our resident state trooper's boss. I meet with him once a quarter and discuss ongoing issues. But, so if any of you really want to attend, I'm more than happy to give you that meeting. I asked Jeff to attend and he basically pawned it off on me. So I've been meeting with them. But if another board member wants to meet with the resident state trooper's boss and discuss issues, let me know and I'll tell you when the meeting is.
So it's a mystery,
Well,
or you could just tell us?
I can tell you.
Anyone else have any questions or comments on department reports that were in the packet? Jeff?
Scott, looks good.
Okay,
So that meeting, if you want to attend, is February 20th, 1:30 to 2:30 p.m.
is it here?
It will be here in my office.
Okay. Any resignations or correspondence?
Yes, there's a resignation for the inland wetlands and courses agent, Josh Snarsky, has resigned. Temporarily, the zoning enforcement officer, Jim Halsey, has agreed to take over that responsibility. So we're not under any super pressure to fill that. He will fill in that until we make a decision as to where we want to go. I think until the Board of Selectmen or maybe the Board of Finance makes a decision on how many hours we're going to allocate that position, we don't want to try to go through the hiring position until we know how much staff time we're going to allot to it.
Okay, so let's back up then. So is the issue that there was not enough hours? What was the impetus for him not being here?
Well, we were a low man on the totem pole in terms of what his priorities are, and he ran out of time. The easiest thing for him to give up was the town of Andover, so we did.
Okay. My understanding was though that there was also maybe a workload that wasn't budgeted for.
Oh, yeah, we definitely did not. I mean, so back up a sec, we had at one point a combined zoning enforcement officer and inland wetland officer,
Yep.
which we allocated 10 hours a week for, but the reality is John worked probably double that amount of time and had been for the last 20 years. Just kind of doing it unpaid because he could never get the board to agree to increase the number of hours and he wasn't willing to not do the job. So, but that's not necessarily something you can expect everybody that you're gonna hire to be willing to do.
Have you done budget calculations with the current year's budget to see if there's room to reallocate resources to hire for the correct number to get us through this year, and then budget for the correct number for next year?
There is not the money in the building department.
Anywhere else?
You could certainly do it out of contingency would be the obvious.
And
There may be other places we can budget.
So how much do we need?
So realistically,
It's what, 3 hours more a week, 30 cents an hour, $100 a week?
so to be perfectly honest, I've allowed Josh to overrun his hours by about 3 hours a week pretty consistently, so he can even get done what's being done so far. Part of the issue is he's a brand new agent, so an experienced person who'd been on the job for a while could probably, my guess is, do that job in about 8 hours a week.
Okay.
That would be a reasonable, now, in the very beginning, when they're starting off, there may need to be extra hours. There are hours allocated allowable anyway, because we have a whole series of inspections built into the gravel operation and a couple other things that the wetlands agent should be doing some of those inspections.
Okay.
And I told both the CEO and the wetlands agent that if they're exceeding their hours because they're doing inspections, that's fine, because we're charging that to the applicant anyway.
Okay.
So even though it's not coming out of the exact right pool,
So let's go back to the original question. What do you need from us? And if you don't have it in the budget, if you do, what do you need us to help you get that done? So that we can go get somebody now if we need them, obviously, for the correct number of hours to get through the end of the year. What do you need to make that happen?
so what I think we need to do is we need to make a long-term determination how many hours we're gonna staff that position at.
Right.
We could cover this year somehow, because we're not talking about big dollars. But the question is, it doesn't make sense to cover this year if we're gonna turn around and say, no, you're back at the original number of hours.
So let's assume we use common sense and we staff the position for what it needs. So you have the money in the budget somewhere to cover the extra 5-ish hours that we're not budgeting for currently.
We could cover between now and the end of this fiscal year.
Fine.
Not necessarily out of that department, but by over expending.
What do you need from us so that you can go out and secure some money? You need us to approve an increase in that budget line item to 10 hours, is that what you need?
So I think long-term, probably, I mean, honestly, we have so many staffing needs. You know, I hesitate to say that's the one we're gonna fully staff at the correct number of hours.
Okay, but I'm just saying for common sense point, if we need 10 hours, then let's budget 10 hours. I mean, if you're telling me it's gonna take 8 to 10, and you've got inspections or whatever, why don't you figure out what it is exactly you need, right?
So the chairman of the commission has asked the Board of Selectmen
I've
to
seen
allow
the email.
between 10 and 20 hours.
Okay, I don't know that, but she's saying that based on a belief that there's a workload greater. If you're telling me 10, I have no problem jumping to that. We're gonna go,
Oh, you know, I mean, could an inland wetlands agent use all 15 or 20 hours profitably during the week? Sure. But, you know, again, because we're understaffed in a lot of areas, I would say a compromise would be somewhere between 8 and 10 hours for both the ZEO and for the wetlands agent. And the reason that is that there are some things like sedimentation, you know, and erosion control that can be done by either, depending on who has the most experience in that area. So between the two of them, we need at least 15 hours, 20 total would be better. Somewhere in the middle, we'll live with it.
so I would be willing to make a motion that we increase, or we ask for an increase from the Board of Finance in that line item to accommodate the extra 5 hours so that you will be budgeted for 10 hours the rest of this year to be accommodated however you think is appropriate as far as transfers. And that you then, once you've got that approved, advertise for that position for 10 hours.
Fair
So
enough.
they can fill it. Can I get a second? Discussion. Any objections on that?
That's smart.
Is Jim interested in possibly doing the ZEO? So,
Not at this point. No,
no.
not right now.
Why, you talked to him?
Yes.
Good.
Not saying that won't change, but not right now. So. That's what No? Okay. All in favor? Okay, can we kick that over to Board of Finance?
Certainly can.
Thank you. And once that's done, just, we already have a job description, let's move forward on that. You don't have to come back here and tell us what happened,
Okay.
please. All right, any other resignations?
Nope. Not that I know of anyway.
Okay. Any other correspondence or anything we need to deal with?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Do we want to do executive session and then budget, or do you want to?
So I would suggest, because members of the audience may very well want to be here during the budget presentation, that would make more sense to do budget first and executive session last. That would be my guess.
Okay. All right. Barbara, is that possible? I know you're part of one of those.
Yeah, I'm working.
All right. As long as it's not gonna get too bad. All right, hard copy budget.
Okay, and just to make life easy, I also printed out the two documents, which were the capital fund list and the capital reserve funds recommended.
So I'll say up front, actually, after some discussion with Barbara, we're gonna have to revisit the recommended, because the numbers are not gonna match up to what we're looking for. But I'm gonna also reach out to the auditor to confirm some things, so that we can have it more accurate. Our assumption was that we're working on for this capital reserve. There was an accounting change, from my understanding, from what Barbara was explaining to me, as far as how the expenditures were reported or shown on our documents. So it may have thrown us off a little bit. I just want to clarify that with the auditor before we try to do the allotments. So I think let's not get into that tonight, but let's focus on the actual line-by-line budget. And I think, unless anyone objects, probably the best way to do this would be to focus on any major increases or decreases. That's really what we want to, if somebody's budget stayed the same or did have a major change, we don't know that it's, unless we think we have a problem.
Okay, so first of all,
Is everyone all right with that first?
So first of all, I had sent to you all kind of a Cliff Notes version, an executive summary, which is also online for the audience members, which just said what are the major issues that we're allocating funds from and to. So bear that in mind as we go through the budget.
You want to give a quick highlight on that for people?
Sure. So part of what I tried to do in this budget was address Andover's biggest priorities, but doing it realizing that there are a lot of things that we would love to fund, but we practically can't just because we're fiscally constrained by everything else. We're talking about major increases in infrastructure spending to address long-term issues with aging infrastructure. Road work, bridges and culvert replacements, building and structure, and town equipment. For a couple of years, we're going to see some pretty increased funding for tree work. That is simply a fact that 2 years ago, we had a really bad, 2 years in a row, we had a really bad gypsy moth that caused a lot of die-off of the mature oak that we have. And also the ash borer has pretty much decimated the large ash trees in Andover. So for a period until we address that, we're going to need to bump up the budget for tree work for the town to address that.
And black birch.
And black birch.
Kill my property.
So fundamentally what we're trying to do is establish and fund permanent funds for these. Just because it makes it easy, and it means if you don't spend the whole $100,000 on tree work this year, it's sitting in the permanent fund to be spent next year. So it takes a little of the time pressure of spending everything exactly in a fiscal year. We have some questions in with the town's attorney as to exactly how we can make that legal and still satisfy the requirements of our charter. So personnel changes. So what I'm suggesting is that we add a fourth full-time public works employee. As many of you know, at one point Andover had a 5-person full-time public works crew, and they plussed up with 2 more full-time summer employees for a total of 7 during the main road work and paving season. So we have roughly half the number of hours of public works employee time that we had historically. And we need to reverse part of that trend because we're just frankly not keeping up with the project list they have. And in a lot of cases, it's a lot more expensive to sub these things out than to do it in-house in terms of drainage work and some of the projects that are within their capabilities.
So what you're saying is that even though we're subbing out, work, there's prep work that our road work crew does to decrease the cost of those projects. Right?
Correct. An example of that would be if you take a road paving project. So we did a road paving project last year where we paved Townsend and Ryan. But the town crew still did some of the original canopy cutting before, and they pushed the embankments back before, and then after the paving project was over, they had to go back in and reseed. So even though we subbed out the paving, there were still quite a few weeks of labor by Public Works involved in that.
And actually, it's not just reseeding. So after they pave the roadway, all the shoulders have to be redressed, so they actually have to bring the side back up so that the asphalt doesn't shift. And then they have to put in new rock drainage and riprap and stuff in any of the drainage bases.
Correct. So, and one of our biggest problems in town right now, one of the things you do if you start looking carefully where we had really bad pavement failure, it's almost always due to drainage. So one of the things the town needs to address dramatically is drainage that affects town roadways. Having 4 people allows us to run 2 crews and have 2 crews working independently, which would be an advantage to us. I'm also suggesting that we add a part-time senior services coordinator. We have been running with almost 100% volunteer effort on that for many years. And it's wonderful that we have volunteers that have been willing to put in that much time. However, there's a few things that we've dropped when we were doing it. And I think we owe it to the senior community to put somebody in place that's a professional, that's accountable to the town to deal with senior issues more so than what we're doing right now. Right now, we fund that position at just over $3,000 a year and combine it with the social services person. So we have one person that makes $3,000 a year that has a pretty wide-ranging job title. So,
but that's not just about compliance, right? I mean, there's a state guideline for what we're supposed to be doing there, correct?
Yeah, and I mean, we have a series of services we really need to be providing the senior community, and we're not doing a great job of it right now.
Because we don't have the time.
Because we don't have the time. And it's wonderful that we have a lot of volunteers that are willing to do the work. You know, but with a town employee, you have a lot more accountability.
Okay.
So I would strongly suggest that. As we just talked about, increase the hours of the zoning enforcement officer, as well as the inland wetlands officer. Increase compensation from my administrative assistant, Amanda. Decrease hours for the tax collector to a part-time, which will take some effort and will require a union negotiation. And combine the budget departments, the Andover Town Hall and elementary school, eventually ending with a full-time budget director and at least a part-time assistant. So that's it for personnel. I gave you information about the school budgets, but that has nothing to do with me or you per se. So the other thing is that long-term, the town really needs to allocate roughly $400,000 a year for road work. We haven't done that in a long time, and we've run ourselves into a pretty big deficit in terms of overall road quality. If you look at the number of road miles that we have, $400,000 should be basically a typical yearly maintenance budget for the number and length and type of roads that Andover has. So my suggestion is that we allocate that every year, and we do it out of taxation, because if we take it one time out of the unexpended fund balance, and the next year we don't have that, it's better to say up front that the reality is we need to spend that money. We should be able to take roughly $100,000 a year out of that from the town aid road fund, and use the other $100,000 roughly that we get for other, not directly paving or pavement preservation, but other, projects associated with the road, guardrails, things of that.
So you're looking at an additional $300,000 from taxation specifically?
Correct. And if you look back historically, we have spent somewhere between $0, and $250,000 a year on road work. It's varied dramatically from year to year. Most years, or a lot of years, we didn't spend any. We only spent what the state gave us for town and road. So tree work, we talked about that earlier. The town's gonna have to allocate a fairly big pool of money for tree work. We know we have more than $100,000 worth of tree cutting to do, just to address the dead stuff that's on the side of town roads now. And most of that stuff has been dead for 1.5 years or 2 years, so it's gonna be coming down fairly quickly if it's not addressed. So that's why I'm asking for that. I think if we do that for a couple of years, at the end of that period, we should be in pretty good shape, other than at some point, the town needs to go back and do a serious canopy trim on town roads, because we've had multiple complaints, both from the bus drivers and, from taller vehicles smacking branches as they're driving down our roads. It's been since the 90s, since as a town, we have done extensive canopy removal. We do a little bit each year when the bus drivers tell us every time they go down X road, they whack the top of the bus and it's really loud. We'll go cut that one limb, but we haven't done it as a general thing for many years. So that's tree work, bridge and culvert work. We've talked about this in the past. We have a couple large bridges that we're going to need to address over a period of time. The thing that's most in need of addressing right now is the Bunker Hill Bridge.
That's the one that had the hole at the beginning of the year that we all went looked at.
Yeah, that's the one that had, right. So for the record, in around 2007, that was still considered structurally satisfactory. In other words, it was a 6 on the scale, and between 2007 and now, it was downgraded from a 6 to a 5, a 5 to a 4, and down to a 3.
This is also a bridge we went to a referendum with, or town meeting, and it failed, right?
Yes, we took that, the town took that to public meeting a number of years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, to fund the replacement, and it was rejected at a town meeting. At a structural level of 2, they're likely to put weight restrictions on it, which would inhibit us from driving school buses and plow trucks potentially over that bridge. So it has some negative repercussions to the town. That's our greatest. The bridge at Long Hill is also structurally deficient, but when you read through the actual notes, what they're really the most concerned about is that a really large, like 100-year storm will scour the bridge support enough that it will be structurally unstable. Not that it's unstable today, but it's vulnerable to a big flood event.
So now that we've got a report on that, we know that, or maybe another 10 years out of that, something like that?
I think we need to be starting to think about that. I mean, we've got to do them in succession because they're expensive projects. We really need to set aside around $450,000 to do the Bunker Hill Bridge. The bridge at Long Hill would be in that same category.
That's down the road.
Yeah, I think we can put that one off. And then we also have a bunch of smaller culverts that need to be addressed. The one by Casola Road.
Yeah.
On Lake Road, the end wall has fallen off or has deteriorated very badly, and that pipe has a number of structural issues in it.
Yeah.
But honestly, I can look at a pipe and I can say it's got lots of holes in it. I can't tell you whether that's 2 years or 5 years, which is why the town has hired Brandon to evaluate all the culverts. The state has also listed the bridge over Merritt Valley, which is a town bridge and it's small enough that they won't fund anything, as being one that needs professional evaluation because of its condition. Bridges smaller than 20 feet, they don't actually rate, but their last report indicated that it was structurally proficient.
Okay.
So we need to look at that one also. And then we got a bunch of work we need to do on buildings. We did a major improvement in public works by doing the roof on public works. That was a 44-year-old roof we finally addressed. And we also addressed the major asbestos issues we had in the building. So that's a big plus.
Don't we also have like an actual, like fuse box, not a breaker box in there still?
Yeah, electrically, there are a number of problems with that building. I have asked Rick Langley of Lenco Electric to give us kind of a priority list to work off basically the OSHA violations in that building, so we can at least get it up to code.
Makes sense.
So that's going to take some money. I've also asked Nutmeg Mechanical to give me a really rough estimate for what doing the HVAC system in the front office area of Public Works. And the reason is, if you look at the electrical bill for that, there's a huge spike in the winter because that building, the whole front office area and bathroom still has electric heat. And that's really expensive for the town. So if we know what our costs to redo the HVAC system, it might be economical for the town to do that sooner rather than later. It's just to cut down on.
How many rooms is that?
It's a main room and 2 bathrooms and a storage area that may eventually be a bunk room.
Okay.
So that, the library chimney needs repointing, there's a few other small things. But those are kind of the major, in terms of changes that, at least from my perspective, that we need.
Okay. Questions? All right, so do you want to go through on a line level major changes?
Sure. How would you like to do it? I mean, you're the board. We can do this however you
We can,
desire.
if you want to have us look through them and then ask you specific ones?
So there's a couple things we need to do as a board. So the Board of Selectmen, in a sense, is your own department, the way our budget rules work. So on page 3, the first thing you need to do is you need to set your salaries, because we can't, that's your department. Currently, the first selectman, I think, gets $2,500 a year in each individual selection. Your selectman gets, good question. I think $1,500 a year. No, $1,200. That's right, because the Board of Finance was pissed at the Board of Selectmen a couple years ago and got it. So
I wouldn't say that. We weren't pissed.
you were pissed, I was there. So the first question for the board is, you guys need that, you need to set. I know there's been some discussion about zeroing it out. I would actually recommend against that. It's not a big stipend, but compared to the amount of work that the board puts in, having a small stipend is not inappropriate. And at some point in the future, that may sway somebody willing to take on the position.
Look, I don't take on this, right? So I already donated my salary. We're just working out the details on how to get that done. Because I personally,
didn't do this for the money. I don't know anybody up here that did. I think Paula didn't know when we asked her. Jeff didn't know. I knew and didn't care, and Scott. So, I personally, look.
Then simply make a motion to zero out the salary budget.
I'd like to make a motion that we leave the stipends as is, for salaries as is.
Yeah, but let the individuals
Decide
if
what
they
they want.
want to.
There you go. Is that what you guys want to do?
Yep. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Discussion, I would say, I'm gonna vote against it only because, look, we're gonna be asking a lot budget season of the town, right? And we're asking the school to cut, we're asking everybody else to cut so that we have money left over to add to other areas. And, you know, I just don't see I don't see where $100 a month, you know, we all live in town. It's not like we're driving very far. You know, what is that? That's just my take. I mean, the $100 is a token.
And my take on it is, you may not be able to work it out, so you can funnel it to the food pantry or whatever, so you may have to do an after-tax donation, so if you do it.
Right, so why not just, you know, I mean, I'm not trying to guilt anybody, but I personally just believe that even if we cut them in half, just to say, hey, we're not gonna do this, you know, to show the town that we're trying to take some austerity as well. You don't even know what you're getting. It's just a thought,
Yeah, I think it's a good point.
you know,
Good points taken.
just to show the town that we're in it, you know.
But I think there's some substance in Eric's comments, that we have a hard time finding people to run, and the hours that are put into this, as a selectman, I think,
Oh, I'm with you as far as hours, but
I think it would encourage, it encourages people to be more involved.
So in 4 years, when we're all for election, we'll change it for,
I
on
was
that?
just gonna say, it does
We
not
can always change it
stand,
back.
yeah, it doesn't have to stand moving forward, you can always change it next year.
Yeah. And this is really about what happens next year.
So, yeah, I mean, if we have the option next year to add it.
Look, I would make the motion to amend yours, if you don't feel as though now it's appropriate, to amend yours to cut the salaries across the board in half for the selectmen. It's not much, it's $5,000, but it'll cover half of if we did that, that would cover almost half of what we're looking for the senior services position. Just a thought. If someone wants to second that, great, if not, that's okay.
I think it's still there.
Well, it's to amend his motion. Are we marinating? Okay, well, discussion on the original motion then, to move it forward. We've got a lot to get through, so. Any other discussion on the original motion?
I think I agree, I agree with you, we're asking other people in town to cut things, and I think I agree to either say 0 or at least bring it down. I'd be willing to cut it, and then we can revisit it in the future. Yeah.
You know what, I mean, we don't have to make a decision on it right now, we still have budget time.
Maybe that, let it marinate a little bit.
You're okay with tabling it, we'll let it marinate?
I think, yeah. I
We
think
can rock,
that's-
paper, scissors later. You all right with that? Scott, you all right with that?
That's what you want to do.
We're asking what you would like to do. Would you be okay with offsetting the salaries right now and let it sort of sink in as to what we're asking from the
And
town?
that's what we're still doing, discussing it still, right?
Yeah.
And
Would you be
Yeah,
okay?
my motion was to leave it as is for now.
leave it alone, yeah.
Well, then we don't need a motion, we'll just leave it.
Still discussion.
Well, you actually will need a motion at some point,
Yeah.
because you set that, nobody else can set them for you.
Well, let's,
Well, the Board of Finance said, Board of Finance cut them last time.
because they can cut anything.
Well, they can cut them, but because the Board of Selectmen is its own department, You set
We request a certain.
your own salary, you, in a sense, do set your own salaries, not that the Board of Finance couldn't zero them later anyway.
Well, look, we're gonna have to set budget workshops anyway, so I would say, we put it out there, and I know it's a lot to ask of any one of the public meetings to say, yeah, I don't want my 12 more hours, whatever, but, you know, I would just, let's not make a decision on this now, let's think about it. Okay, so, we're not
Well,
gonna,
we still have to make a motion.
no, we don't have to do anything,
I already did.
well, he made it,
We just need to vote.
We're just discussing it, now we need to vote. Leave it alone.
alright, so no more discussion?
Mr. Vice, yeah.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to leave the salaries as is, yeah, or actually, is it salaries or the whole budget, basically? Right? Because we're voting on the whole budget for our department, correct?
I mean, I think the only thing you really have to make a motion on this time is your own salaries.
Okay.
Motion on the table.
No, I'm just asking though, so we don't set the rest of the department's budget, but we set our own.
Well, I mean, technically, you set the number for the board clerk for the Board of Selectmen.
But you don't want our input on it.
You can add your input on that, but let me tell you what I did.
Okay.
Was based on roughly $100 per meeting cost.
Okay.
That gives you 15 meetings, 12 regular, 3 specials a year, which is what I set it at.
Okay.
But you're right, technically I was overstepping my bounds, and that's your determination.
Well, the other thing I would point out is that you take into account us doing budget workshops with that. Yes, you did?
So I added 3 meetings. I assumed that when we did actual budget workshops, you wouldn't have a recording secretary for the budget workshops.
Okay, fine, fair enough. That was my question.
But if you choose as a board, then we can add however many budget workshops you think you're likely to do in an average year to that number. That would increase that number if you so choose.
All right, so I guess at this time then, to vote on the motion to leave the selectmen's salaries as is,
We're not going to amend it. We're not going to amend the motion.
I asked for an amendment, did you second it?
I did not.
Yeah.
I must have not heard you correctly.
So
What did you
my
ask?
motion to amend was to amend the original, Jeff's original motion to leave alone, to amend it to cut them in half.
I'll second that.
So Paul seconds that. All right, so motion to amend to cut them in half. We have to take a vote on that first. All in favor of that?
I don't think we should be making this motion since Jeff is not here. I think we should have the first selectman involved in this discussion.
That's what I originally said. Let's table this, and you
That's
said
what I
no.
said. No, I said let's vote to table and just leave it as is for now until,
Okay, so you're good to vote to table.
yes.
Okay, so we're gonna table and not move forward on this motion. All in favor of tabling, or amending this to tabling, and we'll address this when Jeff is in session.
Correct.
All in favor of that? Okay.
Okay, on page 4. So my salary is set by the agreement that we have in place.
Yeah.
So there's nothing we need to discuss about that unless you want to discuss it. The only item there that is a major change is the salary for my administrative assistant. And if you, and that's based on $21 an hour at 19 hours per week for my assistant.
And what's the current pay rate?
$17.50, something like that.
So you're looking for a little $4.
Yeah, so it works out to roughly $7,000 a year, which is a fairly large increase.
It is. So everything else is mostly cut, so you're cutting mileage, dues, and membership, all that other stuff. Okay. Is there any discussion on the administrative assistant? Do you guys want to move on that at all? No? Scott? Okay. 5?
Okay, not anything really too exciting, other than I did recommend that we take the Board of Finance legal budget down to $2,500.
So it's still enough for them to meet.
Yeah,
It's our contract.
it still works out to more than 10 hours of legal advice.
That's fine.
Plus, you can always ask the town attorney, who's now on a retainer, and you can ask him anything at any time, because he's, basically a town employee.
So it still give you access, Mark, at this point, because you don't have a retainer, and then if you need something outside of this council.
Right.
Did you find out why actuarials went up so drastically?
By what did?
Actuarials, page 6.
No, honestly, I did not. Maybe Barbara can address that, but I
No, it was just, that's the Hooker and Wolfman report that they have to generate, our OPEB.
Yeah.
It was just a lot higher than budgeted, when we paid it last year. So I'm just putting in, an increase. They're just more expensive.
So who does that?
Hooker and Wolfman.
Do we have a contract?
I don't know if there are a lot of people who do these OPEB reports, but, not that I know of, no.
So what's the difference between that and audit?
This is the other post-employment benefits, so
Oh, so this is specifically for benefits?
largely the school. We don't really have anyone. The school has retirees who
Yes.
are allowed to buy into
Okay.
the insurance, the health insurance. So this company evaluates our exposure on that.
So to evaluate exposure, it costs us $5,000.
It costs a lot. And yeah, I was kind of surprised because, as I said, when we paid the bill for 2019, we overran what was budgeted.
Does it only apply when someone wants to buy in, or we have to do it every year no matter what?
Well, you have, it's a state requirement that you have to do it. And then a lot of this information gets transferred into the audit report. That's why I have both right here I'm working on.
Can you just make a note to see if there's a contract for that, and if not, if it's something we can look and see if we can at least.
Okay.
I mean, I think we get in a habit as a town of, we use a particular vendor and then we don't shop it. And I think we need to be better about that, so. Anyone else on 6?
Yeah, and obviously, we don't really have a firm number for audit services. I put in last year's request as a placeholder, but I'm not saying that the Board of Finance has to decide whether we're going forward with an RFP or whether we're trying to negotiate with our existing.
The existing auditor has said that he'll think about it. I think it depends on, I'll explore that conversation a little more when I call him.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. At this point, I don't have a firm number for that.
I think, though, we probably want to be budgeting a little more going forward, because this is sort of a lower number for the last 2 or 3 years, so.
I spoke to him this afternoon and I asked him if he could get something, a decision and a price by the time of the Board of Finance meeting, so that the Board of Finance can act on it, because if he doesn't want to do it, when the Board of Finance decides they want to go out to bid, that's like pull the trigger at that meeting.
Yeah.
So he said he would definitely put it on his calendar to get something to us within 2 weeks.
I personally don't have an objection of us staying with him for 1 more year, but I think that at that point, we need to RFP it again. Because it wouldn't have been RFP'd in a couple of years, and this would be, the benefit of staying with him at this point is that it was the last time on the old system. The new software will be up and running at that point, so that'll be a whole other ballgame, so, hopefully. Anything else on page 6?
Nope.
Page 7, you got a bunch of decreases.
Yeah, so basically, for a year, we can take the assessor's legal counsel down because it's not a reval year, and we tend not to get sued. And the town attorney is on a retainer, so that still leaves us some money to hire outside legal services beyond, so that's reasonable.
Page 8.
So this is the financial office, and where that's going, I'll be perfectly honest, I have no idea. We added a big chunk for a software transition, And the real question is, the Board of Selectmen made a motion at the last meeting to go for a combined budget office and hire a budget director.
But we're still working through that, I think we're all aware of that.
Right.
We're still working through it, so I don't think this line is settled, and I don't personally know that it's gonna be settled until even after it hits the Board of Finance. So.
Right, so I suggest we move on, if we leave that for now.
Any objection? All right, 9.
So 9 is the tax collector's office. So my suggestion is we try to negotiate the tax collector down, not all the way to a part-time as in under 20 hours a week, which is what this number represents keeping the tax collector on full-time through basically October, and then going to 19 hours a week after that. My suggestion is that we shoot for somewhere around 24 hours, and we leave her a part-time employee with benefits, with the understanding that the 2 months a year, which are the major tax collection months, she'll work the full 34-hour work week, and a reduced work week in the months when there's a lot less activity in the tax collector's office.
So she would average 24?
So she would average 24.
So we would provide benefits accordingly?
Correct, which means year in, year out, she would be running about, most months she'd be working somewhere around 22 hours. The 2 months a year, which are collection months, she would be working an average 34-hour work week.
So we've started talking to the employee, but we still have to reach out to the union what we come up with.
Well, if once the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance decide that that is the way we want to go, then we need to immediately start discussions with the union to make that happen.
Okay. So we probably want, when that goes to the Board of Finance, to ask them to address anything that's contract issue right away. Try to make those decisions early so that we can move those forward. And that way, if we feel like we're getting stumped down, we can make an adjustment before we go to budget, final budget. You know, basically give us, we get the budget to you before our next, at our next meeting, before your next meeting, then that would give us, give or take, hopefully about 8 weeks. Pretty close to it.
Yeah. And the $800 less in DMV fees, that's just because we no longer have to use the LexisNexis system.
Yeah.
Therefore, we no longer have to pay fees.
Yeah, she said she was having better luck just using Google, but, okay.
Other questions on page 9 in that office? Assessor's office is essentially unchanged. The only increase in that is salary, and that's a union. Contractual. Board of Assessment Appeals.
Same thing. The very minor one, I know.
So did the Board of Assessment Appeals request a
They
budget?
submitted a budget, and they specifically put in a clerk, because it's a new board, and they said they may opt to have a clerk at their meeting. So that's why they put in the figure.
But, yeah, the problem is that figure is really low. That would essentially give them a clerk at a Board of Assessment Appeals meeting.
Well, how many meetings do they have?
Well, I don't know, but.
At least 3, and then they do site, so.
Right, so I'm looking at it and saying either they have a clerk or they don't. Any way you cut it, that number doesn't make sense. It's either gotta go up or it should go away. Either they're gonna have a clerk, in which case your costs are gonna be roughly $100 per meeting. So we're not gonna have a clerk.
So I would make a motion then that we change page 11, sub-account 120 to $400. That would cover them for 4 meetings.
Eric, do you want me to record these?
Yeah,
I mean, I have my computer open, so I'll just highlight in red.
sure. Yep.
Can I get a second for
I'll
discussion?
second that.
Okay, discussion? If they're gonna have it, they might as well have enough to cover it. Right.
I agree.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, so that change passes unanimous.
Okay, next page is town clerk. That's essentially unchanged, other than the mileage reimbursement is decreased a little bit.
Okay. 13,
Probate court is just what they tell us their expenses are, it has gone up a little bit, not dramatically. Same thing on page 14 with the salaries for elections.
so I think your supplies was the biggest change, $1,000, but that's what, that's for having the, ballots and stuff printed, is that?
Yeah, I think that is because of the fact that we're coming into
Election year,
a,
okay.
yeah, a presidential.
If anyone has anything, please just speak up. I know we're going fast, but,
No, good.
okay. 15,
Old Town Hall is basically unchanged.
I thought they were trying to do some, weren't you guys working on some stuff up there?
Security,
Is that it?
for right now.
Okay.
Maybe you put a sign.
Okay. 16 looks like contractual.
Yep.
17, we reduced.
Yeah, we just looked at what we're actually spending year over year on legal ads, and we think that will cover. Again, because it's presidential and you gotta announce some of that stuff, it will go up a little bit versus what we've spent, but we should be able to cover with that budget.
So 18, software maintenance, 5% increase, what's that? Oh, 06, oh, that's the one you and I talked about.
Right, that's primarily, so we had recommendations from both South Windsor, our IT support, no smarting from you, as well as we used a town resident who is fortunate for us, that's also the director of IT security for the University of Connecticut. And we asked him to look over the proposals submitted by South Windsor. And one of his recommendations was that we go to O365. So for software standardization and also utilize them as the email provider for the town.
Use who for the email provider?
O365, we use it as the service provider for email.
What about just doing G Suite?
So we looked at G Suite a little bit. G Suite's cost because we are not a nonprofit, we are a town entity, so.
Towns are a nonprofit by definition.
Well, all right, we don't qualify as a nonprofit, we qualify under their governmental section.
Okay.
Which they have a specific governmental section, and the prices for G Suite, are not better than for O365. So that portion isn't the cost savings. If the town feels that's excessive, and you want to pursue cost savings, one of the things you could do is instead of using O365 for all the computers, you could buy a license for Microsoft Office 2019, standardize everybody on 19. It's a little more expensive the first year, but it's lower, but then you own it, until you finally get sick of having an outdated Microsoft process, in which case we go through that again.
How much more is it from?
I think it's around $249 per. So we have basically 18 systems that would need it.
So it would pay for itself after the first year?
So it would pay for itself in the second year versus O365, but it wouldn't, we wouldn't update. And if we went that route, then we would need to stay with our existing email provider, because that's not including. Because part of what we're doing is we're using the O365 license for the emails for all the town employees, and then we're just adding for all those additional emails that we supply to like Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, you know, that type of things. People who don't physically have a town computer won't have an O365 account for that, but need the.
And we can do that if we buy the O360,
And that, right, that's what we're doing through O360.
but it will allow us to add those emails.
If we pay for each one, yes.
So every person, we'd have to pay for an email on top of this number.
No, that number includes, that's both the O365 accounts for the town,
Okay.
computers, as well as the O365 plan that just allows the email and the connectivity stuff.
Who's South Windsor using for email provider?
O365.
Okay.
So I mean, we can look at other alternatives. You know, it just depends where you want to go with that as a town. The other thing here that's questionable is we put in $12,600 for the phone system, kind of based on recent usage. That will go down. I have a very rough preliminary estimate for our costs for the VoIP managed system, and it looks like it should be considerably less than that. You know, we obviously have the upfront costs because when the IT provider and Ledco looked through our existing structured wiring, their conclusion basically was we're gonna have to rewire the building and basically start over when we change service locations. It's just because of the age of the existing wiring.
The age?
Well, it's inadequate, and what we would have to do if we were gonna do it is we would have to do a patch panel where the existing server is, and then we'd have to run essentially patch cords, all patch cords to the new location.
I'm confused, why? What's the? You're saying that the wiring's outdated?
So
I mean, we don't need Cat 5.6, I mean.
So first of all, you're gonna run essentially two sets. You're gonna run a communication, and you're gonna also run a communication line that the VoIP goes over, because they're not going over the same lines.
Agreed.
So you're running to each office and to each telephone location anyway for VoIP. But you're also starting and terminating in different locations than we were before. So you're moving the server to a different spot. So where all the end runs come to one spot now, all the end runs come to a different spot. So you're either keeping the original location where all the jacks terminate and running patch cords, or you're starting over.
Starting over is, so you got to price it both ways?
I was not planning on it. We had a discussion, and both Wenco and the IT guys, you know, both said in this case, we'd be far smarter to start from scratch if we're going to do that. We'll know in a couple weeks or in a week. If the price comes in really high, we'll look at other options.
Okay, fair enough. Anything else?
Nope.
19, nothing. 20. 21. No issues. 22. Contractual. 23.
So just for the record, 23 should actually come in lower. That's the KERMA. We don't have that number yet as it relates to Andover, but I went to the KERMA annual meeting.
You mean 22?
Yeah, 22, and it looks like it should be roughly what it is today. So that line will probably go down at least a couple of %, but I don't have the final numbers yet. That's it.
23 is based on payroll. So we're taking up the physicals because we have more drivers.
Right, and part of the reason we put a pretty big request in for physicals is a concern by the fire department that they're not really meeting their statutory. So basically what's been happening the last bunch of years is we send the town employees in for physicals first, and then we spend the rest of the money on the fire department. And they said it's just not enough for them to meet their needs.
No, that's fine.
Okay, next, senior transportation is gonna have to go up. We have more requests year after year for senior services.
But we're changing the pay rate, we're also requiring drivers, or looking for drivers that are CDL too, right? So,
We're probably gonna have to hire one more CDL driver right now. But the Board of Selectmen motioned to not do that previously. So as it stands right now, we are probably looking for one CDL driver, but we're not necessarily requiring we move towards.
but I thought we already have one in the system.
We do have one driver that has a CDL license and that can drive the 22-passenger vehicle.
Yeah, because our goal is to get away from the bigger bus.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So, we don't really have enough money in the maintenance budget based on the age of the vehicles we have right now. So that's got to increase a little bit, and we've got to increase the total salary for drivers.
They're also looking for a grant over there too, right, for that other bus?
So there will be a grant opportunity at some time this spring, and we are going to request probably 2 additional vehicles to replace the 22-passenger as well as a second van, because we're still running a lot of medical calls with a much bigger vehicle than we need to be running for, because we don't have the excess vehicles.
Okay, so 25.
So 25 is the salary for the municipal agent.
Which is?
Currently, we budgeted just over $3,000 for the municipal agent / senior.
I hate the title, can we change the title of that? I don't think if people see the heading, they know what seniors would otherwise.
I don't see why you couldn't propose a different title.
How about senior services, senior coordinator, or something? Municipal agent salary just sounds so horrible.
There is such a thing, like municipal agent on children, municipal agent on aging, they're kind of,
But if I call Bolton and I ask for the municipal agent, they're probably saying, oh,
Yeah,
you're the
but you-
senior coordinator.
right, and sometimes municipal agents on children are just volunteer people. It's kind of like a tree warden in your town, you have one, but they're not paid. But if you're looking to hire a person, give them a title.
Okay. Can I change the name of the town?
Works for me.
Okay.
So this is the actual, within the department and the department name, or just this,
It's under senior citizens, right?
right?
So let's call it the senior coordinator or something,
Senior Services Coordinator?
please. Any objection?
What's senior services?
Senior coordinator.
Yeah, Senior Services Coordinator.
Okay.
And it's basically the work that Kathy Palazzi's doing now, which is working towards
So in
older
Bolton,
drivers.
it's more stable, isn't it split between social services and senior services? It's one person who does both.
I believe so, yeah.
So should we call it social services?
Fine, social services.
Well, there is a department for social services.
Yeah.
You can keep going down, because the person who was doing that job, Laurel, was wearing 2 hats. And we had a discussion with her about trying to code her time card so she actually reflected what she did for social services.
Am I missing
what she
that?
did
Oh, you're saying it's a whole other department.
agent.
Right.
Well, no, I'm explaining why they are separate and how we try to track the hours. And in the end, it turns out she's doing mostly senior services, because even when she's doing rent abatement and that sort of thing, it's for seniors, and she was coding it that way. So you can have
It's kind of like-
positions.
I just don't like the word senior service, that's social services. Oh, it's up to you.
How about services coordinator?
That's fine.
Council
Town services coordinator, senior services coordinator, anyone?
Do we should just do it, just senior services?
All right, social services coordinator.
And then when you get to the social services department, you just eliminate that department, or,
Sure.
okay? Social services coordinator,
Yes.
within the municipal
Yes.
department.
Social services is more than just seniors.
Yeah.
You're talking about a senior coordinator, right? For senior activities and whatever, social services.
Yeah,
It's
it's
the
the same,
kids.
it's the same job, I guess we just split it out, somehow figure it out.
What page is the other one?
Yeah, what page is it?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I mean, it's the same person doing both jobs,
Yeah.
It was, and
Yes.
so if we just split up whatever their salaries, two departments, it's the same name, it's, not an issue.
Eric would probably want to work that out.
Do you want to split up, Eric? Does it need to be?
As of this point, no. I think there may come a point in the future when we choose to separate that.
But we won't be on the board at that point, so.
We may all be dead by that point.
Fine.
So, I mean, you could, the social services comes under public welfare. There's not a big budget request for that, that's an $800 budget request. There are some things, we've had a little line item in there for paying access, although we don't seem to have used it in a bunch of years. And we've always funded a small allotment for clothing, food and clothing. But we haven't really been using that because we don't have the personnel necessarily to even administer that.
I still think it all goes back to, that person's gonna probably end up picking up that, I think just condensing the departments makes more sense at that point.
If the Board of Selectmen chooses to eliminate a department and add those line items under the municipal agent,
Just for the sake of simplicity.
you can do that.
I think it's fine.
I mean, we're gonna be going in that direction anyway.
Yeah, I'd make a motion that we eliminate, what's that department?
The social public welfare department, page 44.
So I'll make a motion that we eliminate the
So
public.
is that required by state statute or anything to keep it
No,
budget separate?
not that I know.
well, that's concurrent with Board of Finance though, because they really do budgets. I mean, it's kind of like, this is their budget, so the recommendation to them.
Fine, we'll make it as a recommendation and they can mince it as they so choose.
Eliminate social services.
And condense those line items into 0145.
Problem comes again is that, does that imply you're not offering services to anybody that's not a senior citizen? I'm asking, I'm not.
You're the only one that's applying. I'm not applying.
You just not add all the line items, but
It just doesn't make sense to have, I mean, we do this with a lot of things where we have, literally look at this budget, it's ridiculously long thing.
What's the harm in leaving it the way it is though?
Because we stick money, so basically we stick money in an account that we never use, and then it sits there. And we do it every year, and then at the end of the year, it either rolls back or it gets transferred out. It would make more sense to put that money into, put that into, if you want to change the title from senior citizens to, resident services coordinator or something like that, so that it covers everybody, that's fine, I don't really care. But it just makes more sense to condense it in one area. So my recommendation would be to the Board of Finance, consider eliminating, 0501 and condensing it into 0145 and changing the name to, resident services coordinator.
Can I add some information about those two?
Sure.
They really are two separate departments. As far as the state is concerned, they really want social services department going on in the town, and the senior services is a whole different thing.
Okay, we
Even
don't have
though
all
we
that.
have not staffed it properly and had enough hours booked to the social services aspects, which is child and family services, which is working with, you
I
know,
hear what you're saying.
yeah,
But let's be
two
honest, in a
totally
small
different
town,
things.
most of those things are coordinated through the school. They're not really coordinated through the town. You know, we're not New Haven, we don't have all this great outside stuff, and we don't have the resources to staff it, so those people would be better served by putting those resources into a resident services coordinator that can do both. You know, personally, I mean, a small town, I think it's ludicrous that we put money in a thing year after year and literally barely touch it, you know?
Because it's not necessarily being booked properly. Not that it's not being done. The hours are being put in. Access exists for a reason. I mean, it's just, it's not that that department isn't necessary. We need that department. It's just not getting charged or broken up properly. That's all I'm saying. It's like to just
So
go
your-
ahead and
your
make
belief
that
is
go
this is-
away and.
So your belief is this is an accounting issue?
My belief is that the town needs that department. You're actually making a department disappear by doing that. So you're changing the accounting and you're making the department disappear. That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying, I think Paul is right. Leave it be for now and go ahead and figure out if it's an actual accounting issue. But literally not that many hours are spent on social services. A lot more are spent on senior services. But to just make it go away is not, it's not good. Because at some point in time, we need to make social services more robust.
We also need another $1 million in this town, but it's not gonna happen, you know?
Right, but I mean, you're just like, flick of a switch, just make it go away. And
I'm not
it's like,
saying-
no, don't do that.
I didn't say make it go away, I said we put it in a department that's actually funded that may be able to actually utilize those resources to serve those residents.
You could not put any dollars in there at all, but leave it be at zero if that's how you feel.
What sense does that
Because it needs to be there. It's social services department in the
make? I
town
get
is
that, but
important.
if we're providing social services through some other entity, right? Because you're saying to me it's happening, but it's not happening there. So then the answer is to figure out where it's happening from and staff that correctly, right?
We need to staff the social services correctly and make sure we understand what it is that's supposed to be charged there.
I understand that, but to be candid with you, I've actually asked this question for the last 3 years on the Board of Finance and never got a straight answer as to what's going on over there. Like never. No one's ever been able to provide me an actual example of what this person is doing or not doing, you know? So, I mean, in that's the frustration. So when we start talking about dollars and cents,
And that's not an accounting problem.
I didn't say it was. I asked if you thought it was.
Yeah.
So, and I have no problem in engaging you in the conversation, but to be candid, I don't know what the exact solution is, but doing nothing year after year like we do doesn't solve the situation either, so.
Because we have had counselors in the past that have office hours and actually do counseling.
Mhm.
We don't have anybody doing that job right now. Not that we don't need that job.
So when
We're
you-
supposed to be doing that job.
So it sounds like you have some knowledge of this. When you say in the past, how far in the past are we talking?
About 5-6 years ago was Heidi Donnelly was our counselor. You know, it's just, I know, like, bringing up history doesn't necessarily mean that we should go the same way in the future. But what I'm saying is social services has been so drastically underserved in the town of Andover. It's just upsetting when you say, well, let's just go ahead and combine it with senior services because it's all senior services anyway. It's like, no, you need to keep it separate and we need to start actually putting personnel, hiring personnel, funding.
Just so we're clear, I didn't actually say that. I didn't say it was all senior services anyway.
Yeah.
I said that generally speaking, the bulk of it is senior services. And in fact, I very clearly said that it seems to me like that person is probably going to be more served by the agent that we're bringing in currently, right? If we budget for this and it passes, they'll be served by that person, whatever those needs are, whether it's access or what have you.
Right.
But to leave the funds in a department that's not staffed doesn't make any sense. It's, personally, my compromise to you, if you have such concern about this, is that we can recommend it to the Board of Finance as a consolidation and encourage whoever it is. I don't even know, again, I've asked this before in the past, never got an answer from Joe, and I never got an answer from Bob as to, A, what is that person actually doing? Because I'm paying for a phone, I don't know if it's actually getting phone calls on it. I'm paying for a salary, but I don't know that they're actually showing up and doing any work, because currently we have Roberta doing some of that stuff, right?
So that salary is going to Roberta. She's being paid partially off that line item and partially off the existing municipal agent salary.
Right. So just,
For instance, didn't she deal with an eviction or something
Right.
in the last year? I mean,
Right.
That was money from social services.
correct.
I mean, there are some social services things. You could say the renter's rebate is as much a social service thing as a senior service thing.
But again, if we take those same services and we condense them into one department, and as I said, we should change the name of the department so it doesn't say senior citizens. My motion was to change the name of that to resident services, so that we have all of that covered under an umbrella that's actually funded, that has a phone and mileage and staffing. Because otherwise you stick it in a line item that's not staffed, it's not funded, it's not helping anybody. And it's been like that for 5 or 6 years apparently. So that's my take on it.
That there hasn't been a separate social services person.
Right. And I don't know, especially looking at our budget requirements for the next couple of years, given that we haven't spent really anything on the roads, and now we have to,
Right.
or we have a problem. I don't know that, we're gonna have a hard time probably even getting this coordinator position through. So it would make the most sense to shift that stuff over. So my motion would be, again, to change to eliminate 0501 and condense that into 045, changing the name to resident services and changing municipal agent to resident services coordinator.
So the service will still be available.
Yes, but funding, right?
We're moving it, right,
Right. Would you still second that?
yes.
Further discussion? And again, my recommendation would be that we're recommending this to the Board of Finance, and that, Eric, if you can provide to them the background when that happens for that Roberta's currently in, whatever, that would be helpful.
Quick question, on that budget, the 0501, Eric, you did the budget, right? I mean, that budget, because I don't remember putting those numbers in. Maybe what is the mileage for? I mean, that probably doesn't need to be there, right?
So
That's if technically she could bill mileage to go out to a house or something like that.
well, and I also think that whoever ends up in this position is gonna need some training money, or some is gonna need to start going to, like, for instance, Roberta goes to all the food share meetings.
Right.
She's not really charging mileage for that.
So why don't we ask you then to put together a proposed budget for that condensed department?
So that there would be mileage in that department, which makes sense,
Right.
whether it's municipal agent
Again.
or senior, that's where the mileage would go. And then Eric, this access number, that's the donation you wanted to make to the access agency?
No, that is what we've had in the budget for access services.
I'm guessing that that is probably the money that would be going to access, because otherwise access doesn't make any sense.
Well, I know we have some expenses,
So let's look into it. If we send money to access, we'll have a transaction, let's figure out if the record's there. And again, we take both departments, condense them, you put the mileage in there,
You put the phone in there, because this person's gonna need a phone, and I don't see that in that list currently, right? If you bring a coordinator in, it doesn't look like you gave them a phone, so, let's see what a condensed budget looks like.
Okay.
And then we can present that to the Board of Finance for their consideration. So that we actually have somebody, maybe we can provide some of the things that you would like to see.
Yeah, I know Access is supposed to be charging us, but only if our residents end up using them.
But again, I just don't want to see stuff sitting there. It doesn't help anybody if it's not being used.
Yeah, and for the record, Access sent us an accounting of the services they provided to Andover residents and the costs associated with that. They're almost 100% state and federally financed. They have asked the town for a $1,000 yearly donation to Access. Their return to the community is roughly $40,000 between fuel assistance and other assistance programs that they provide.
So if that's what we haven't said in the past, and that's what we're requesting, again, why don't you provide a condensed budget with, if that's a thing that we're looking to do, to put that out there for the Board of Finance to make a decision on. Okay, so do a condensed budget, give them all the information. And obviously, you're gonna have, either way, you should be looking at a phone line for this person. Okay. And so that would be my motion, is to suggest this to the Board of Finance. As you got it, you good with it?
Yeah, if you could repeat the actual motion itself.
Okay, so the motion itself would be, again, to condense 0501 public welfare and move that to 0145 and change the name from senior citizens to resident services coordinator, or resident services, and then change municipal agent to resident services coordinator.
I think it would also be helpful to see what other towns name that position,
Personally, I don't really feel better.
just so that.
All right, so all in favor of suggesting that to the Board of Finance for the condensed? Unanimous. Now that person's meeting. 26, 27. That's going to fire hydrant. Question?
You say it stayed the same?
Yeah. Yeah, the only thing I went down is electricity, so now 28. His salary went up, but he's putting in a lot of hours, correct?
Yep, and he gave you a sheet
I
of
remember.
budget factor justifying it.
Yep. Any objection to 28? No. 29? We could.
So this is a placeholder. Scott never formally submitted a budget on page 29. He did tell me verbally that he pretty consistently spends most of the money in that. So he asked that we keep that at 200 to this
So
week.
we have a separate line for cemeteries though, because there was an increase request there.
Yeah, somewhere that's different than
But
this.
Hadley's cemetery is down around
Right,
here,
Yeah.
0313, I think.
Good,
right.
okay.
That's nothing to do with,
No, I was just asking.
yep, ethics commission's on there, but unfunded. Eastern Highlands Health District, those numbers are directly associated with, it's a shared service, so they just tell us what their bill is. I am technically on the board of directors for that organization, so I've sat through all the budget meetings. They had to increase, they had to hire more staff, and they've had to increase the salary levels for the staff they hired, because frankly, they couldn't attract people at their old salary levels. So that's basically the increase, slight benefits and cost of staffing.
So 32, 33, again, I wonder if these down the road are things that we should ask the Board of Finance at some point to condense into that resident services lines. Just put those lines in there, do you know what I mean? Instead of having them on separate budget pages.
Which ones are you referring to?
I would say with 203 visiting nurse, 205 mental health, those are all come under resident services, I would think. Personally, but anyone have any objections to that? All right, so my motion would be to take 0203 visiting nurses and 0205 mental health, take those appropriate lines and ask them to be condensed into the the condensed resident services if they accept that. All seconds?
I'll second.
All in favor? Unanimous? What was the increase for AHM? Why was it so dramatic? Do we know?
So there's a couple reasons. One, they surveyed all the towns roughly a year ago and asked the towns directly what their needs are.
Yeah.
And they ended up providing more services to all the elementary schools. And the towns all indicated that the biggest gaps in coverage were in the basically people who had graduated but were still young adults and were still living in the community. So basically 18 to 26-year-olds, they're starting a series of programs to address their needs.
For 26-year-olds?
Yeah, you got the Nintendo thumbs, they need the thumbs replaced because they play video games all day, stuff like that.
Did you just say Nintendo thumbs?
That's actually a thing. It's actually a thing.
So, no, all kidding aside.
You're laughing. I swear to God, I just had this conversation with my wife the other day about she's seeing a lot of kids. It used to be texting thumb, like when when Blackberries first came out, texting thumb was a thing. Now she's seeing a whole slew of kids for well, they're calling it Xbox.
Right.
Xbox injuries, but it's PlayStation type stuff. Xbox. That's a
thumb replacement surgery.
Well, not thumb replacement, but certainly ligament.
No, I'm not kidding you.
I know you are, but that's okay. All right, so anyways, that brings us all the way.
And for the record, the town contribution to AHM is only about 20% of their budget. The majority of the budget that AHM runs off of is fundraising and federal and grant money.
And don't they split it up based on town population or something?
Right, so we pay based on population.
Yeah, I had a pretty good discussion with Mr. Fish on this.
Yeah.
All right, so do you want to give us an explanation to sort of run down a little bit, 35 there? And,
Sure.
36?
Item number 1 is salary.
Just so the explanation version.
Right. Item number 1 is salary. Salary is going up simply because we're adding
a person,
a body. Vehicle maintenance is going up pretty dramatically. The vehicle maintenance budget had been in the mid-20s. Finance department last year slashed it down to 12,000 for some bizarre reason. And we well exceeded that budget.
You can complain all you want that I cut those budgets, but at the end of the year, when we're almost dead even across the board, you can tell me I'm right too.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so beyond that, so the reason it's going all the way up to 30,000 is one of the things we really need to do this year is the
sandblasting.
Yeah, we need to sandblast one of the big trucks. I got the bill sitting upstairs. It's roughly $9,000.
Okay.
So we're just rolling that into the maintenance as opposed to sending that to CIP as a capital request. Any other questions regarding that?
No. You need truck tires, that's budgeted in. You're purchasing some oils, fine. The other thing is the bolt wall. Did we decide to do that? Where'd you put that on? Shop supplies? Shop supplies. Yeah.
In shop supplies, yeah.
And that was actually a suggestion I had a couple years in a row, that we put a bolt wall down there so they're not running all the way down to now to pick up a bolt. So, the initial work.
We've done that for years.
I know, so we're trying to put that in there so it'll help a little bit, so. And we did go out and try to get some estimates as well, give it $5,000 to get it started. And then the $5,000 covers, and they don't just do the bolt wall, so they'll go in and take a list of all our equipment, and they'll say, okay, you've got a loader that takes this light bulb, you've got welding lights, basic stuff. Micro plates.
Consumables.
Right.
All right, 36. So there's some increase in overtime for snow removal. This is actually because we're hiring a fourth person, which sounds kind of stupid, but basically with the union contracts, you can't go to a non-union employee for snow removal service unless you have essentially all your union employees that are there already on. And we're going to have, basically, we're gonna take a little money away from Mark, who's a non-union staff person we use, and whoever we end up hiring as a union employee will take it
Maybe I
out.
hire more.
So it goes up a little bit.
But it's not dramatic, we're talking $5,000, so.
Correct. And we're shifting the budget from sand to salt. We're still keeping a little in sand because we supply sand to residents.
Okay. Any questions on those two? Those are probably the big. Yeah. All right. 37, street lighting went down, global warming, 38.
No, we just averaged up what 12 months worth of cost Barbara did and came up with what we're actually spending for street lighting. Plus global warming.
Projecting a budget. I love it.
Well, we're trying.
38. Now, is this, assuming, so this is not including the other stuff that we're doing as far as fixing electrical and all that, that's.
Correct.
Just
This is year in, year out building maintenance. You know.
And I know this 39 of the consulting fees, yeah, bridge and culvert design work, correct?
Correct.
Now, is there any, do we have to increase fees for wetlands reviews or any of that type of stuff on the town side when we start doing these? Because the town will be responsible, and I know we have to, you know, for the culverts and stuff, do we need?
So we are going to spend more time getting things through inland wetlands than we have in the past.
Right, I understand.
So for a lot of that stuff, it really should be the consulting engineer that does it.
Okay.
Because he's the subject matter expert.
Okay. Why such a dramatic increase in mowing?
So that was, so a couple things. One, we are going back to Hebron Parks and Rec, and we have asked them to take over all the mowing of the field. In the past, what we've done is we've used, is his name Kyle? The guy who is running the travel team out of there has been paying for the mowing as essentially his fee for usage of that.
Mm-hmm.
But we've had a bunch of problems with that. Basically the guys, the knuckleheads running over all the sprinkler heads and damaging the actual system.
Okay. So we're gonna give him notice that we're changing this?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we are just going to charge him for use of the field and probably come up with the same
Did you get the name of that other, I emailed you another company, Maxim, that could give you an estimate for that? For what? For your sprinkler system issues.
Maxim?
Yeah, Maxim out of New London. So. I thought I emailed it, I'll try to do that.
We're gonna be putting in, another filter in there, an automatic filter too.
Yeah, and I don't really have accurate numbers for that. We've tended to throw a lot of things into the mowing and ground care. We've been paying for all the sprinkler issues and plumbing issues out of mowing and ground care, because that was kind of the catch-all budget.
Okay.
But that means we're also pretty much overexpended on that right now.
So automatic filter is around 500 and then installation's probably gonna be.
So do you need to add a line item for sprinkler services and sprinkler maintenance?
It's probably not a bad idea.
Okay, so let's make a suggestion to the Board of Finance that on 0313 grounds care, they add a line item for, because we have sprinklers also now at the park too, right?
Where?
Adams Park.
Not yet.
We're going
Associates about something like the park, Veterans Park,
Oh, the Monument Park.
Monument Park, sorry.
They've been talking about that for quite some time.
Yeah, but they're getting closer, and you guys are talking about doing it too,
We'll
right?
probably get it this year.
So let's add a line item to 0313 grounds care for sprinkler maintenance and services. A suggestions to the Board of Finance, all in favor?
Sorry, how much would you add to that?
Let's let the Board of Finance decide if you guys get a number.
Good recommendation. I
Yeah.
agree with that.
Okay, so second?
Yeah, that does make sense.
Paul seconds, all in favor? We're good, unanimous. Yes, if you can get an estimate for them, so the Board of Finance can address that.
Within that budget of 313, those second two lines, beautification of cemetery maintenance, as you see on the side of the notes, Joan Foran does beautification, and then Kathy Palazzi does all cemetery maintenance. I did get a budgeted from Joan last week, very late. She's requesting $1,600, I could change it in here or pass on to the, I had been making changes that are budget requests.
I would make the change, and the Board of Finance can address it.
Joan, I think Jones might need some work on her pump also.
No, I thought they fixed it.
Not bad.
After they pulled it? I thought they pulled it and there was a wiring issue on the pump itself. Oh,
They pulled the pump out?
yeah. Yeah, I had this conversation with her end of last summer.
I don't think they ever did. It was a switch.
Yeah, but they had to pull the pump to get to the switch. It was on the pump.
Well, the last time I talked to her, she said that the switch was still bad. It went bad, and after they worked with it. Needs to be replaced. I guess they just, jury-rigged it.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, it might be appropriate then that, can you just send a note to Joan to ask her to whether or not there's anything else, is the pump needs to be included?
Oh, okay, she didn't put anything in the budget, but
She's got a lot going on right now.
she went, yeah, I know.
Okay, so just send her a note to ask her, and we'll let the Board of Finance know.
To ask her about a pump,
Yes, well
well pump.
pump, question mark, need repair. Okay.
They did fix it at one time, but it went bad.
Yeah, that's one.
And it was at the end of the season, she didn't want to do anything
Okay,
about it.
but if we need to fix it, let's
Right,
find out.
yeah.
Alright, so, 041, sorry, page 41. Fire Commission came in at a 0 increase. They're netting us, so.
Correct.
That's pretty awesome. Kudos to the fire department. 42, we don't have a lot of control over. 43.
So just so that you know, there's some ambiguity in what the cost is.
We know. We've
You know,
been through this.
That's
year.
our best estimate.
Yeah, we get it year after year. Yeah, every year. 43, nothing. 44, we talked about. 45, nothing. 46, nothing. 47, anybody? So tipping fees have gone down.
Well, actually, I don't know if it's about this, but we need to create an account for,
Where?
the Recreation Commission.
So you want to go back, are we going back?
And just since we have the Board of Finance here in the budget,
46?
yes, I'd like to ask the Board of Finance to create a budget line item for Trails Fund.
Okay, so you want to add a line item to into the 06?
Yeah, because the money that's getting collected that is going to the general operation.
Okay,
And
so,
we need to allocate that to the trails.
so 0603 Recreation Commission, your motion is to add an account line item for trails and maintenance?
Trails and maintenance.
Or trails maintenance?
Trails and maintenance.
So this is the expense side, you want to allocate some money
Yes,
for
yes.
trails maintenance?
Yeah, we have some money that we want to transfer in there, that we already have in the.
That would be revenue.
There's revenue, but this would be
It'd be a place to put it
it'd be a place to put it so we can.
when it comes in, so they can expend it the following year.
Right, but we can't put revenue in an expense line and carry it to the next year.
Right.
And we've kind of been because I heard this talk about these races.
Yeah, when I said all this stuff's coming in, it just goes into.
We have nowhere to put it.
Exactly. So
But we can't put it
So
here.
we need to find a place to put
So
it.
you want to put a trails and maintenance fund?
Well, that would be up to somebody to approach the Board of Finance about creating a fund.
Well, that's what we're asking you. You would
Right.
better put
But it's been my suggestion every time someone has said we want to get somebody's doing some fundraising, or somebody's doing a
Yeah,
raise.
it's been an issue every time.
Right, but it needs to go to the Board of Finance to set up a balance sheet fund that will then go into the financial statement.
Yeah, so we can ask them to do that.
Ask the
That's
Board
why
of
we're
Finance.
discussing with you.
Yep, that's it, yeah.
So the motion would be to ask the Board of Finance to set up a trails and maintenance fund.
Yes.
But it would be distinct from his budget, we wouldn't add anything here, because that would just be the expense side.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I just want to say,
So we still want to add a line item.
I still want to add a line item.
Expense line.
All right, so the motion will be for 0603 Recreation Commission to add a line item for trails maintenance, and additionally to set up a fund for trails maintenance separately.
Okay.
And I will second that.
Yeah, and then my question just on that is, this is Carol's budget, so who's going to decide what is spent on trails and who's approving it? Because she's a department head. So I'm just wondering about putting it here without letting her know.
Well, the Board of Finance will make that decision
Okay.
ultimately.
But you understand the
We
magnitude.
just want to earmark the money, because there's $1,500 sitting in the town's bank account that should be earmarked for that already.
Because then she would have to be making decisions as a department head, how to spend the money
Correct.
and to approve the money.
Again, the Board of Finance will make a decision if we add whether they add it or not, and then she'll be at the discretion.
And then once the account is done, we can do the fund transfer.
Right. Okay, so you made the motion, I seconded, all in favor?
Okay, and you called it a trails?
Trails maintenance line item and a trails maintenance fund. So we have a place to put incoming revenue, and we have a place to spend additionally if need be, if this becomes something. So,
You know what, I'm gonna back up again, because the trail maintenance in here suggests that you are appropriating money. You don't want to appropriate money. You want to rotate a fund where the money goes in, the money's spent.
we're asking for two things. Again, 0603, we will add a line item for trails maintenance.
Do you want to suggest an amount then that you want to appropriate?
No.
Okay.
You can check with Carol Lee about that, because she's the one that's processed all the checks for the last 2 years.
Okay.
But if you're not appropriating it, the budget's in place,
It's already been,
He's saying there's already money there.
there's already been checks written to the town of Andover.
But going forward, we can put money into that by transferring it. That way they can spend it without, because if you have it in a fund, then you're actually gonna have to have a motion every time to do it, whereas if it's in their budget as a transfer every year from whatever we brought in, they can spend it.
The Recreation Commission can spend it as they see.
At will, right.
So if we need a bridge built out there, we can talk to.
So if we have a fund we can dump it into, let's say they bring in $4,000 next year, it goes into the fund, then the next year you can transfer it into that.
you can spend it from the fund. You wouldn't put it into, this is appropriation.
But if we spend it from the fund, then it has to get approved every time, rather than the department head being able to spend it,
Well,
correct?
if you set up a fund, you've got to have someone manage the fund. You've got to have someone who can spend the fund. You can't just have a revenue fund where the money goes in and then it flows in. And this is, I'm just talking accounting.
But can, by charter, can we do that and then allow the person that, let's say the rec commission's in charge of that fund, or they're gonna have to come back and ask for permission to spend every time?
Carol's asking for this multiple times, so it's fine.
We're trying to work this out, so.
Right, and I'm trying to explain the mechanism.
I understand the mechanism, the question is, how can they spend out of it? If we set up a fund,
You would never transfer money from a fund into.
I didn't ask that, I asked how we can spend money out of the fund then, or are they gonna have to go back to get permission every time to spend?
Well, who are they getting permission from?
I'm asking from a charter point of view, is there a restriction to that?
If you set up in a fund and designate the recreation commission as the essentially executor of the
Governing
fund.
body,
Right. They should be able to spend from the fund because it's not going to be such a high cap that it meets the threshold that you ever have to go to Board of Finance.
That's the question I'm asking. So,
Well,
That's my-
look at the funds in here, you've got like your Norton fund, money goes in, money goes out, she controls the fund, that's where the money would go. And then you could have Carol
so
as
the
recommendation.
department head, if the Board of Finance sets it up that way, the department head would be able to spend the money as well.
Would you like the?
Wouldn't even have to be a department head, you could say rec commission chair, that's if that's who you want to do it. Right, but I don't think Carol is the rec commission chair, is she?
Yeah.
She is the chair,
Yeah.
okay, so rec commission chair, or you could say rec commission.
Like, if we want to request porta potties when it's done, we can take out of that, those monies.
And I would probably suggest you have the rec commission spend money.
Yes, that's what we like.
So
So we want to be able to go to the rec commission and request the money.
So the Board of Finance, but the Board of Finance will do that, that's really their.
Yeah, so you don't want to line in department because you never put money from anywhere into there except through appropriation.
Okay, okay.
And then that may become the case though, I guess that was my point, is if this thing keeps going, we may want to budget whatever it is, money for porta potties
So
and
hopefully
whatever.
it's self-supporting, that's the.
Right.
The pub funds going into stuff, so it'll be self-supporting.
Two separate mechanisms, basically, funds for.
Yeah. You guys can decide how you want
Yeah.
to put us together, we're just making recommendations.
Since everybody's here, I just figured it. It's been going on for about 2 years now.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned this. Okay, so we're good on that passed. Tipping fees went
That was
down.
just bad budgeting last year. Do you remember that? You were part of that. It was just like guesses and contingencies.
I know, I'm the one that cut it, I cut
Right.
something grand off his request, and it turned out that, we were a lot closer to humans. And anyway,
Oh, we are tracking that very carefully now. I've set up a spreadsheet, Marina's taken the bills and she's categorizing it correctly as it comes off the bills. So we did our estimate again from some actual numbers in the system.
yeah. Do we need money in this budget for the new electrical work? Yeah.
So the answer is, I don't have the final numbers from Lenco, but I don't think so. Because what Rick had come back to me and said, so let me back up. 4 or 5 years ago, the Board of Selectmen or somebody purchased a rotary phase converter that was too small. So we bought it and never got installed. It's been sitting in Public Works for the last 5 years.
You're kidding.
But Rick had said, well, since one of your issues is potential redundancy, why don't you install 2, buy one equal size to that, install 2 of them. That way you can still run 2 compactors at a time if you happen to throw a switch. If you blow a rotary phase converter, you just tell the guys, hey, don't run them both at the same time and you're okay temporarily.
Okay.
So that's kind of his suggestion, so that decreases our costs enough. We should be able to fund it out of the existing money.
Isn't it great to get consultants that actually can tell us what we need? It's so awesome.
Yeah?
What a compliment to you, isn't it? Great. Where are we at with the shed? We're gonna wait until the other stuff's done, right?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense to order the shed
Yeah.
until I feel like we have to have the final numbers for the electrical, we have to have the final numbers for what we're doing for the wall.
Okay.
Because I am looking at the possibility, how much it would actually cost to do the wall, instead of the pre-made block, of actually just pouring concrete.
They wanted like 100K.
Yeah, but I talked to we did have a couple really high quotes initially. And in talking to a couple other contractors, that seemed like those were ridiculously high numbers. So we ought to at least examine it because it's gonna be a pain in the butt to horizontal bore big enough holes for the electrical conduit through it. So it makes sense if you can do a poured wall to do a poured wall. If it's out of our budget, we won't do It's really that simple. I'm just telling you, I'm still examining that possibility.
Okay.
What about the door on that shed up there?
What?
On the building, the building?
I think that's more of an issue if we're gonna try to do that shared space thing, but we talked about maybe doing that with a
Cox box.
Cox, so. I mean, I don't see a need to address the door otherwise, because it's basically a door to a dirt space.
For the record, I don't agree with trying to do it out of a Connex up top. I think that's a tough enough place to plow now. I wouldn't put additional obstacles in the way of the plow guys. That one might take.
I mean, that's not on the table right now anyways. It's-
Right. Yep.
So their concern is what, trying to bore the holes?
Yeah, I mean, one, we didn't get the quality level out of the blocks that we hoped to get. I mean, we got the air and train part, and
You know, see what the numbers.
Yeah, let's just
Yep.
take, let's
Let's move on. It's fantastic. Let's get in there. All right. Anything else on 47?
nope.
Guys, girls? No? Okay, 48?
Is that economic development? I know what you want.
Sorry.
I don't have page numbers,
Oh, recycling.
oh, you're still on recycling?
Yeah, no, we just went from a transfer station to recycling.
Oh, okay.
And now we're moving on to economic development.
All right, and since Elaine's here, I'm just gonna ask, when you gave the budget, you had clerk/training, which are two different sub-accounts.
Yeah.
So we could split that up, as long as you're here, and just, how much for clerk and how much for training?
What did I ask for?
300 total?
Lord.
But I mean, in truth, we're not using a clerk to record the minutes.
No, we're not.
The only thing we're
Just call it
really-
training then.
That's just training.
Just call it training. Forget the clerk. I do the minutes all the time myself.
Right.
Okay, so you're not asking for clerk, you just want $300 for training.
Toward training, any kind, yeah, training classes that we might be able to go to, municipal EDC training classes.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yep.
50, planning and zoning.
So again, the wages cover the regular meetings plus a special meeting.
Yep.
Hopefully that's enough. In the standard. The other thing to keep in mind is that the legal professional line item there covers all the land use boards, even though it's just in the planning and zoning.
That's fine. 51, I got nothing. Anybody? All right, 52, building department. There's some increases, but it's mostly dues and conference seminars are the major things. Wages went up, but we knew that was. And we're still doing an evaluation on cost there, right?
Yeah, I have all that information sitting on my desk. Honestly, I just haven't gotten to it.
Now, Megan had said that she thought we couldn't make adjustments without a little more extensive.
So there's basically two things. There's the building department and the land use department, but they're kind of linked because,
Yeah, I get it.
they're linked. So we can address both of those going forward. The land use had some immediate recommendations as to what they could do.
But do we have to go to town meeting and hearing or any of that? No.
No, the charter allows the board of selectmen to set that. So what has to happen is we have to bring it back to you, you as a board have to agree with it.
But you're putting that together still.
I'm working on that.
Okay. And the wetlands we talked about already.
So the wage number is budgeting for 8 hours a week.
So we'd asked you to change that to 10, so if you can make that adjustment.
So if you want that to go up to 10, that's okay.
Yeah. That was the motion already. The other one's office supplies. So nothing else on 53, 54, anybody? I got nothing. 55. Salary zoning agents. Now, if you have 10 on the other one, do you need 10 on this one also, or is this the 8? You think that's?
If you told me in a vacuum, I would have said we Most of the time, we need more hours for the zoning agent than the wetlands agent.
Okay.
But it's been kind of hard to figure that out because we've had a combined guy for so long that it's hard to say what hours went to what.
Right, so I would make a motion that we ask Eric to adjust this salary zoning agent from 8 hours to 10 hours.
second.
Scott seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, if you can make that adjustment before that goes to the board of finance, please.
Yep.
56, got nothing. 57 is, let's not discuss that. 58 library, it's just salary. And that we go into capital. That's whole stuff, whole stuff. All right.
So do you want to wait on capital funds at this point?
Yeah, we have to, I have to talk a little harder before we address that, because these are not even close. The stuff we're working off of, not even close. Unfortunately. All right. We're gonna do capital funds at another point. We should probably, let's do our executive session at this point.
Before you do that, do you want to set meeting dates? If you're planning on doing additional budget meetings as the Board of Selectmen, you should probably consider setting meeting dates now.
Do you want to do, we're gonna have to come back into session anyways to make motions, so.
What do we have out there?
We have 2 executive sessions. And then, we can do public comment for people. Does anyone else, I mean, you guys are like the last Mohicans, Diane?
No, I know that.
Yes,
Diane, do you have anything
right
for
here.
public speaking?
No, we don't.
We'd like to give you an opportunity before you go.
No, just, I'd like you to remind you about the 175th anniversary.
Of who?
The 175th anniversary of Andover. Andover in 2023. Very exciting.
You can get the Rolling Stones to play, they're about that old.
There you go. And
And of
something
course,
old, something new,
Bolton
something
is
new.
inviting us to their grand 300.
I can assure you that when we get past budget, we'll address it. Probably is not gonna be a pretty budget thing.
Yes, I'd like to see you put something in the budget.
Yeah, probably not this year. I would this year, only because we're already so far behind everything else.
Like I said, that's why I say 2023 is not that far away. So,
Well,
But at least set up a committee.
that's at least 2 budgets away, so.
would you like me to find a couple of people that might be interested in spearheading a committee to do that?
I will promise you that if you come up with bodies, I'll come up with a committee, how's that?
Well, okay, I'll see if I can find some people that would be, I would think people would be interested in celebrating 175 years. Okay,
Excellent, thank you.
thank you.
Do you guys want to try to do schedules now? You want? Okay, Jeff wants to do it before we go to executive. You good with that?
Guys,
We need to have at least one more budget meeting before the 20, or by the 25th, I think the meeting's the 26th. Yes. At least one. So we're on the 10th now, so we need to find something next week or do it on the 24th. Okay.
So you have the community room calendar, do you want to see the pictures? Yeah, it's easier.
Sure.
If you don't mind. Yeah, I just want that.
yes,
Yeah, you guys are both gone, right? Okay. All right, between the 20th and the 25th.
Well, the 21st is bingo.
Okay,
It's a Friday, so that night our family will be to bingo.
okay.
25th is the shared services committee.
In here?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure, it's for the school or
It's for the school one, the Board of Ed shared
Okay.
services.
So I thought that was in the library, no?
Well, but we're on the committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
As am I.
That's at 7 p.m.
It says 7:45, so,
That's where he asked because of the conflict.
so how long do you think our budget,
We're gonna need.
we need time?
This is 24th and 25th.
The 24th, as far as the schedule?
Yeah.
24th, 7 p.m. planning and zoning, I'm assuming it's cut off, and there's a 7 o'clock Republican. But it doesn't.
So the Republican committee is in here and.
So what was the first date you'd be back, you said? Jeff?
Well, the only days that Paul and I are going to be available will be after the 19th.
After the
Are you
19th.
back? Are you
Up
back?
on that, okay.
Right.
Do it on Sunday.
I'll be back 18th late.
Is that
I'll be back 18th.
Yeah, I could do the 19th.
The 24th, would you have it in here? And
Well.
So why can't we do the 19th? What was the conflict?
It's tight.
Yeah, we're
It's
coming back
tight.
on the 18th.
It's tight. Let's,
Okay.
Can we do this in Eric's office?
all right, so
Do we need, does this have to be a public meeting in here, or can we do it in Eric's office?
It will have to be a public meeting, clearly. So I suggest there may be people interested in coming, so my office would be tight.
maybe I'll involve the RTC though.
But you could always request the music room.
Okay.
that's where planning and zoning is.
Oh, they're not the library?
No.
What day are we talking about?
So maybe you could request the library.
We're
What's
talking
that?
about Monday the 24th, right?
I don't think the music room would be good anyway, if there's basketball, not, it would be noisy.
Okay.
So the 24th is also the Republican something.
Talk to me, can we ask them to meet in your office? Ask me to swap? They only get a handful, like a half a dozen members.
If
All right, somebody,
I mean, we could also choose to do it, we might be able to do it at the library too. But that's the only date you could do it. I mean, we could try the library, the elementary school library. If you wanted, I mean, if that's the date we can work, we can come up with a location.
Alright.
did we say the 20th wasn't gonna work?
I can do the 20th. No, CIP is 20th, can't.
And you're going to that meeting, is what you're saying?
I kinda have to.
Yeah, and I gotta go to CIP too.
Alright.
How about Friday? The
That's-
21st?
Bingo, I said that.
Oh, bingo, I thought you meant bingo like that was good.
No, it's bingo at the school.
They were like, bingo, like, yeah,
No,
whatever.
I said bingo, 21st is out, and we'll be at school bingo.
So this is why we need a community center. You know, so we actually have meeting space.
So the 24th works for everybody, but we're having a problem with the locations.
Alright, so let's do it on the 24th and we'll leave it to Eric to find a spot for us.
Okay.
Alright, everyone in agreement with that?
I think that's our only option,
Okay.
is the 24th.
I'll text Jeff right now and ask him.
And what time? 6:30?
No, that's the one last thing we're gonna do before we leave is change those times back.
We get 6:30.
According to Eric, we did, I think
I could have swore at a meeting. So one of the whole reasons you decided to change to a Monday night was so that you could have the employees, because you guys were unhappy that every time you requested an employee other than Barbara to come here to a meeting, we ended up paying them overtime because they're all union employees.
I thought the agreement was that we would have a meeting at 6:30 when needed on a Monday night, but otherwise, we would just do a regular scheduled salary.
Possible.
Or
Well, I'm just saying, if you're setting a calendar at the beginning, if you change the time, then you have to order the special meeting, and then you can't.
No, if we do it with enough notice, no, you actually don't.
Yeah, as long as you say it at least 30 days in advance, you're okay with it not being a special meeting.
Yeah, you know, 30 days out, I mean, this.
It could be confusing to residents what time the meeting starts,
6:30 is confusing and also very hard for all of us.
and that's fine, but
So, all right, so 24th,
so what time did you decide?
7. And I will make a motion right now that we amend the select board meeting times to 7 o'clock for the continuance of the rest of the year. Anyone want a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I will change the calendar. Okay, this is a budget.
Not a problem.
Right.
I like 7.
Okay, so, and so we'll,
Get you for another extra half hour.
I'll also make a motion that we have a meeting on the 24th, location to be determined by Eric for a budget workshop. All in favor, any second?
I'll second.
All seconds, all in favor? Okay. Anything else we need to do? All right, then I will call a motion to move to executive session